Chapter 247 Husband of Western Kuen's Imperial Family, Part 4. The sound of a mocking laugh came from below. Could it be that she made a mistake? Western Kuen's princess turned her head and looked around. It did not seem like those people were making fun of her. Then who were they laughing at? Yu Fu glanced in Princess Danyang's direction. Princess has made a mistake and acknowledged the wrong person. The one who is hosting today's banquet is Princess Danyang, that one. Western Kuen's princess came to a sudden realization. She initially thought that the one dressed in a flashy, red dress was a young miss from an aristocratic family with no sense of self-preservation, having come to snatch the princess glory. For a spring banquet on the city's outskirts, how could a real princess put so much effort into being awkward and dress as if she was in the imperial palace? Seeing Princess Danyang's ugly expression, she immediately apologized for her mistake. I have only just arrived and do not know any of Eastern Ling's nobility and hope that Princess Danyang would be so magnanimous as to forgive me. Though she too was a princess, her attitude was very humble. It seemed that the rumors were not fake. Her status among Emperor Kuen's daughters was not very high. Princess Danyang sneered. Princess Shure has a grand style, but you can hardly be blamed. The guest of honor always arrives last. As the host, how could I possibly blame you? Western Kuen's princess immediately understood what she meant and knew that she was blaming her for recognizing the wrong person. She boldly and freely said, I arrived late and failed to recognize Princess. I should be punished. I shall punish myself with 3 cups to apologize. Princess Danyang gave a look, and the palace servants quickly brought out the wine and wine kettle. However, the cups were not small. Instead, they were bowls the size of their palms. Since Princess is showing sincerity, I will forgive you after you finish drinking. She wanted to punish Western Kuen's princess by having her drink from such large bowls. The people present did not have any good feelings for the people from an enemy country, but Princess Danyang wanted to bully this girl, and there were some men present who found this unpleasant. The relative who had called Princess Danyang chubby stood up. Western Kuen's princess is a weak girl. How could she possibly drink 3 bowls in a row? You said that she would be fined 3 cups, but it ended up being 3 bowls. Princess Danyang is a little too lacking in reputation. It was him again. Princess Danyang's thin eyebrows became upturned in anger, and she suddenly remembered that the relative to whom Western Kuen's princess was engaged, was it not the young uncle before her? It was no wonder he would speak up. Princess Danyang sneered, Uncle really is kind to his future wife, huh? But you must not forget your identity. You are a member of the imperial family, and she will be a wife to that family. You are not going to be a husband to Western Kuen's imperial family. You. The implication of what she said was that uncle was biased toward Western Kuen. If anyone else had been accused of such a thing, they would have been terrified to death. Western Kuen's princess glanced at him and smiled brightly. She initially thought that Emperor Ning would just engage her to someone who was completely incompetent. Who knew that her future husband would be so courageous? He was a proper man. He had tried to protect her, so she could not just watch as he was accused of siding with the enemy. Western Kuen's princess lifted the wine cup. It can't be helped. To begin with, it was my mistake, so it's natural to be punished with some wine. There's no need for everyone to feel displeased on my behalf. I will be drinking first. She lifted the bowl and tilted her head back. She looked like an ordinary girl, but she was quite good at handling alcohol, drinking all of the wine in the bowl. In the end, the bowl was completely dry, and she went to pick up the second bowl. Just as she was about to raise it, her hand was grabbed by someone else. She looked over in surprise. The one grabbing her arm was the young girl whom she had misidentified as Princess. The young girl smiled kindly, the dimples at the corners of her mouth especially cute. Forget it, just 1 bowl is enough. If you continue drinking, you will need to go and lie down in the back later on in the banquet. How can you play around like that? He quickly bowed, then carried the wine away. You! Princess Danyang stomped her foot. That damn servant actually listened to Yu Fu and not her. Many thanks, Princess Zhenjiang. Western Kuan's princess held Yu Fu's hand and looked at her gratefully, then looked over at the uncle. The latter's face turned faintly red, as he pretended to fan himself with his folding fan before feigning ignorance and slowly leaving. He simply disliked seeing Princess Danyang flaunt her power to bully someone else. It was not for the sake of protecting his soon-to-be wife. If this was discovered by his group of friends, would he not be mocked to death? Princess Danyang looked over at the crowd. Yin Shuo and Yin Jiyao sat off in a distant corner and did not converse with anyone. The cabinet was being established, and Yin Shuo losing power was just a matter of time. At this time, nobody would pay them any mind. Forget it, Yin Shuo was today's true goal. She would just bear with everything else for now. Chapter 248 Yin Shuo Suffers Humiliation, Part 5. Having offended Princess Danyang, none of the female guests dared to chat with her, thus she could only follow Yu Fu. Yu Fu had a good feeling about her. What should I call princess? My name is Kuan Yuyang. What a boyish name. It was no wonder she was so free and bold. It was just. Seeing the strange look on Yu Fu's face, Western Kuan's princess finally reacted. Oh. You are asking about my official title, right? I originally had no title. Before coming to Eastern Ling, Father Emperor randomly decided on one. I felt that it had no meaning, so I can't really remember it. Yu Fu could not stop herself from laughing. Princess really is a straightforward person. Since that's the case, don't call me by my title. My name is Yu Fu. Your surname sounds really nice, and the same is true of your give name. My name sounds like it belongs to a boy. It doesn't sound charming at all. Your name makes me think of the wind blowing the soaring clouds along. It sounds both pretty and imposing. Kuan Yuyang scratched her head. What soaring clouds? Slow down a little. I'll write it down. If anyone ever says that my name does not sound nice, I will have a way to argue against them. She was born with a low standing, and even her title was granted randomly right before the political marriage, yet she maintained such a heart and candid attitude. Yu Fu chatted with her for a short while but felt as if they were old friends. This lasted until Gu Shubai called her over. Yu Fu, didn't you want to learn archery? Come here. She brought Kuan Yuyang along with her. Those are my elder brothers from Marquis Gu's manor. Let's go together. Marquis Gu's manor was famous in Western Kuan. Everyone knew that if it was not for Marquis Gu's manor blocking the way, Western Kuan would have broken through Eastern Ling many years ago. Gu Huaijiang's title of God of War was known by all in Western Kuan. Kuan Yuyang felt a little reserved. The two countries had been at war for many years. Having fought on the battlefield for many years, could Marquis Gu's manor accept a princess from Western Kuan like her? Gu Shubai and the others stood at the archery field. Seeing Yu Fu lead Western Kuan's princess over, they politely smiled at her. Does princess know how to shoot an arrow? The people of Western Kuan were skilled in martial arts. Girls, like boys, could lead soldiers and fight wars. Kuan Yuyang, as a princess of Western Kuan, it was highly probable that she knew how to shoot an arrow. Sure enough, she nodded. I know a little. I do not dare show my pitiful skills in front of eldest young sir. Gu Shubai pointed to an area nearby. A few young sirs from aristocratic families were preparing their bows and arrows, seemingly wanting to compete a little. Princess Danyang wanted everyone to compete, and the winner would win a prize. It would not be good for me to not give her face. If princess has some time, I want to ask you to teach Yu Fu some archery. Saying this, he pointed at Gu Xiang and Gu Yi. These younger brothers are too careless and don't know how much strength the girl has. They are completely unable to teach Yu Fu. He wanted her to teach archery to Yu Fu. Kuan Yuyang was overwhelmed by the favor, as she looked at Gu Shubai and vigorously nodded her head. I am grateful for the eldest young sir's approval. Don't worry. Leave Yu Fu to me. She was not at all reserved. She had only just become familiar with Yu Fu but was already calling her by name. Gu Shubai smiled and left Yu Fu to her before heading to the group of young sirs from aristocratic families. Not too far away, Princess Danyang walked over to Yin Shuo's side. I know that Prime Minister Yin has not been in a good mood recently, so I specially invited you out to relieve your boredom. How about Prime Minister also goes to compete a little? Yin Jiao quietly sat to the side. Upon hearing Princess Danyang's words, she could not help but feel shocked. Yin Shuo was a civil official. It would be fine if he had been asked to write a composition, but how could he possibly compete against the sons of military families? Had Princess Danyang invited him out to relieve his boredom or to humiliate him? Yin Shuo simply said, "Many thanks to Princess Danyang for the love and care. The scenery of Chunhe Garden is very beautiful. Sure enough, my mood has improved a great deal just from looking at it for a while. As for competing in archery and riding, I shall refrain. Thank you for the invitation, Princess." It was no wonder when she looked at Yu Fu's expression that she saw a girl in love and not just a younger sister. Who is the one who couldn't even hit the target? She pointed at a handsome young man in the crowd. He looked like a scholar, so why would he participate in this sort of competition? Gu Xiang looked over and said with a smile, "That's our Eastern Ling's Prime Minister, Yin Shuo. Yin Shuo, you're a little too lacking, right? You can't shift your shoulders and lift your hand. Of all these people, you're the only one who couldn't hit the target." Princess Danyang angrily called him by his name. It was clear that she felt that Yin Shuo, her future husband, had caused her to lose face. Gu Shubai looked over at Yin Shuo and slightly furrowed his brow. Strange, why would he take the initiative to participate in this archery competition? This was completely different from his usual way of doing things. Using one's weakness to combat another's strength. This was the dumbest way of doing things. Even stranger was Princess Danyang. No matter how displeased she might be with Yin Shuo, to show consideration to Emperor Ning having sanctioned this engagement, she should not try to humiliate him in front of so many people. Chapter 249 Lucky, Part 6, Lacking. Yin Shuo had lived for 21 years, and this was the first time that he had been described in such a manner. He had always been the most talented youth in the capital. Having been conferred the title of Prime Minister at a young age, he occupied a lofty position in the imperial court. Yet Princess Danyang was publicly saying that he was lacking. He laughed. "Princess, Yin Jiao told you that I was not good at riding and archery and that I did not want to come and compete. Princess insisted that I come and compete, yet now you look down on me." The cabinet was about to be established, and the Prime Minister was about to lose power. Even his future wife refused to give him any face in public. Some people began quietly discussing this. What is happening with Princess Danyang? She's being a little too mean. First, it was the princess from Western Kuan. Now, it's Prime Minister Yin. How does making Prime Minister Yin lose face help her? Husband and wife share the honors and disgraces. Does she think that humiliating Prime Minister Yin will allow her to make herself look better? Prime Minister Yin really is pitiful. A perfectly fine civil official was forced to come and participate in archery, and he had to suffer humiliation. Princess Danyang faintly heard the discussion. Not only did she not hold back, but she went even further. If you know that you are not good at it, why not put in some effort into learning? If you want to be this princess' husband, it's natural that you must be both a talented scholar and skilled in martial arts. Instead of learning to make up for what you lack, you make excuses. You're really gutless. There was an uproar. She actually said something so rude. Kuin Yuyang asked Yu Fu, your Princess Danyang, is her, she pointed at her head, a little slow. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi burst out laughing, ha ha ha, you're absolutely right. Her head is a little slow. Yu Fu seemed to have something on her mind, as she shook her head. Normally, she can't be considered smart, but she has never been this stupid before. She must have some sort of goal. Things are not as simple as they seem. Both a talented scholar and skilled in martial arts, she must be talking about Gu Shubai, right? Yin Shua's expression was livid. Being compared by his future wife to the person she loved, and she did not stop at mocking him. This was not something any man could tolerate. He coldly looked at Gu Shubai, and the latter had a heavy gaze, calmly returning a look. His gaze told Yin Shua that this was unrelated to him. Yin Shua thought for a moment and suddenly understood what Princess Danyang was trying to do. He forced out a smile. It's me who was lacking in learning. If I knew that Princess Danyang liked people who were good at riding and archery, I should have put more effort into learning. Rather than get annoyed, he was actually able to smile. Princess Danyang frowned. She searched through her mind for all sorts of nasty things to say, trying to make Yin Shua look even worse. There's no need. For someone as lacking as you, this princess refuses to marry. Even if I marry you, this princess will never treat you well. You might as well just give up now. In the end, she was a princess of the imperial family. She had not heard the worst things shouted by angry wives in the marketplace, thus this was the worst that she could muster. With the host leaving, the scene quickly turned ugly. Some people wanted to go and say a few comforting words to Yin Shua, but they were also worried that the wrong words would make him feel even worse. They could only leave in silence. Some people took advantage of the situation to quickly leave. This would save them from getting caught up in a storm for no reason. Even more people were happy to enjoy the show, feeling that the marriage between Princess Danyang and Yin Shua was most likely over. After suffering this sort of humiliation, what sort of man would obediently marry her? Unless he was a bastard, Yin Shua was the dignified prime minister. He definitely would not need to do so. If it had been me, I would seek out His Majesty to ask for the engagement to be cancelled. What's the benefit of marrying a princess? If she's like Princess Shanin from the Liu Song dynasty, having numerous male lovers, the husband would be nothing more than a cuckold and a bastard. That's right, to be insulted like this, even I would want to ask for the engagement to be cancelled, much less someone of Prime Minister Yin's stature. Everyone quietly chatted while dispersing, and Yu Fu smiled with her head down. Heavens, that was shot by Princess Zhenjiang. How could that be? She's such a small girl. People muttered that it was impossible, but everyone subconsciously gathered around to ask about the origin of the arrow. Kuin Yuyang was very direct. The one that landed off-center was mine. The one that landed in the very middle was shot by your Princess Zhenjiang. It really was her. Princess Zhenjiang really is the valiant daughter of a general's family. She really has Lord Marquis Gu style. So what if she was not truly his daughter? That she could be raised like this despite not being his true daughter was what made it truly incredible. Yu Fu wanted to stop Kuin Yuyang but did not act in time. Faced with all of this praise, she could only hollowly smile. I was lucky. I was just lucky. Through the crowd of people, Yu Fu looked over toward the archery ground. Yin Shua's back was slightly hunched, and he took advantage of being alone to leave on his own. That figure was as lonely as could be. Chapter 250 To Cancel the Engagement or Not, Part 7. When leaving Chunhee Garden, Ku Yuyang gave Yu Fu a kingfisher hairpin. I originally planned to give this to the host of today's banquet, but no matter how I look at it, I feel that it would suit you better. The hairpin made of silver was quite ordinary, and the only part that stood out was the feathers that were gathered together to portray a phoenix bathed in flames. It was very realistic. Kuan Yuyang retrieved it from a brocade box. When Yu Fu saw it, she immediately said, "What beautiful feathers! I haven't seen such beautiful feather accessories in Eastern Ling. I haven't seen many good feather accessories recently." Kuan Yuyang felt a bit delighted. Our Western Kuan is mostly mountainous and forested terrain, unlike Eastern Ling's flat plains. It's natural that there would be more kingfishers. But it's not so easy to find the feathers necessary from a single kingfisher. Gu Shubai and the others did not really understand accessories. At a glance, they simply felt that the hairpin was eye-catching but not in poor taste. Based on Yu Fu's expression, she really liked this hairpin. You brought this a great distance and naturally planned to use it to help forge a path forward for yourself. How could I accept it so easily? Could it be that you want me to give it to Princess Danyang as an apology? It's too late. She already hates me. It would be better for me to just try and win your favor. I wonder if Princess Zhenjiang would be willing to grant me this favor. Kuan Yuyang grinned cheekily and shifted forward, as Yu Fu grabbed the hairpin from her hand without any hesitation. She liked this kingfisher hairpin, and she also liked Kuan Yuyang's unrestrained and bold personality. Did you see how much your future husband was protecting you? He is Princess Danyang's uncle. You will be Princess Danyang's aunt-in-law, so is there any need for you to be afraid of her? Aunt-in-law. Whether or not she could become Princess Danyang's aunt-in-law still remained to be seen. Kuan Yuyang's expression suddenly wilted. Yu Fu, you're smart, and the eldest young sir is even smarter. There are some things that you will surely be able to guess without me saying. I think of you as a friend and don't wish to hide anything from you. Yu Fu immediately cut her off. There's no need to continue. Princess should not even be saying these things. You are a princess of Western Kuan. You should understand what happens to those who betray their homeland. Fearing for her safety, Yu Fu added, don't worry. Since ancient times, the princess who comes for a political marriage does not get to make any decisions for herself. His Majesty is not an unreasonable person. These words nearly completely exposed Western Kuan's schemes. Kuan Yuyang placed a hand on her chest and let out a sigh. Sure enough, Yu Fu and the others already knew, but it was not what she had talked about. This was also fine. There was no need for her to betray her homeland, nor did she need to live her life on tenterhooks. Merciful Buddha, it seems that I will have a chance to live out my life in Eastern Ling. I won't delay you any further. I will be leaving first. She happily departed, and Gu Yi clicked his tongue from the back. I have never seen someone who is even more thoughtless than me, and it ended up being a girl. No, there was still another. How could he have forgotten Su Yunyan? Gu Xiang resentfully said to him, with you, it's because we spoiled you. The princess of Western Kuan is different from you. Her path in life is a bumpy one, and she has no choice but to be open, or she would have died from depression long ago. Exactly what sort of life she lived in the past could be seen by the fact that Emperor Kuan was willing to send her over as a distraction. Gu Yi was not satisfied with this. I was spoiled by father and eldest brother and the others. How is that related to you? You and I are the same age. How have you ever spoiled me? How have you spoiled me? Gu Xiang fiercely smacked him on the forehead. Me not hitting you is considered me spoiling you. Gu Shubai helplessly shook his head and turned to look at Yu Fu. I have ordered for a carriage to be brought over. Your hand must be sore from training in archery, right? It would be best to ride in a carriage on the way back. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi immediately stopped arguing. I also want to ride in the carriage. After a brief argument, Gu Shubai relented, and all four rode in the carriage. Gu Yi was the first to speak. once the cabinet is established, the prime minister will either lose his influence or will be removed entirely. Inshua's father had an incident, and he does not have any backers in court. If he does not marry Princess Danyang, he will be completely hopeless. Gu Xiang built on his foundation. Also, his actions against Marquis Gu's manor have already displeased His Majesty. If he goes and brings up cancelling the engagement, His Majesty might completely strip him of his court position. That would truly spell the end for him. After going back and forth, there was no possibility of Yin Shua backing out of the engagement. No matter how much Princess Danyang embarrassed him, it would be better than completely losing power. Yu Fu was also unable to explain what she felt. She felt that there was a strong sense of conflict between Yin Shua and Princess Danyang and that the two were not suited to being together. The two of them coming together filled her with an ominous feeling. Gu Shubai smiled. I also feel that he will not cancel the engagement, but the excuse will be different from what you two are saying. Initially, he could have backed out of this engagement, but now that Princess Danyang has humiliated him, he can no longer do so. Why is that? Chapter 251 Another two conferred in an instant, Part 1. While the Board of Rites planned the wedding banquet for the two princesses, another letter was delivered from the border with haste. Western Kuan's army was 100,000 strong. The soldiers were already on the borders of Zhuguan and Weizhou. It was clear that the enemy had come prepared. With both rations and medicine prepared, the situation was dire. The officials were shocked. They never thought that this sort of news would come while they were preparing for joyous matters. It was truly unheard of. Western Kuan truly is ambitious. Sending a princess to improve relations was fake, and hiding the truth from us is the truth. Even wild beasts will look after their young, so for Emperor Kuan to give up his own daughter for the sake of deceiving us, it's truly too vicious. Your Majesty, please quickly dispatch Lord Marquis Gu to organize the troops and set out for Zhuguan and Weizhou. Emperor Ning waved his broad sleeve and remained calm. There's no need to worry. Marquis Gu has already made plans for this, sending out the third young sir to the border beforehand to command the troops. For the time being, there will be no danger. What? Gu Huaijiang already knew that Western Kuan was going to attack. Thinking back, Gu Huaijiang said that there was a secret military matter that he could only tell Emperor Ning about. It turned out to be this. The court officials let out a sigh of relief. They knew that with Gu Huaijiang present, Western Kuan was no cause for concern. Some could not help but feel curious. Your Majesty, Lord Marquis Gu, may I ask how Lord Marquis Gu knew that Western Kuan was going to launch an assault on the border? Gu Huaijiang replied based on the facts, the deity of medicine has divine foresight. Before Western Kuan sent out their princess for the marriage to improve relations, if this marquis talked about this matter, it's inevitable that there would be a chance of being suspected of starting a war. For the sake of preventing any information from leaking, it was kept hidden from the court officials. I hope that everyone will excuse me. So that was the case. Everything that Lord Marquis Gu does is for the sake of Eastern Ling. We are truly too lacking. This was in spite of clearly knowing the risks involved. Lord Marquis Gu truly is a hero and is worthy of admiration. Yin Shua stood in place with a blank expression. He had lost this match from the very beginning. Gu Huaijiang had deliberately enticed him into stealing the military report and used that matter to report to Emperor Ning. Not only had he failed to trip him up, but he had also given him a helping hand. That damn Gu Huaijiang, as a general, his mind was not the slightest bit duller than the other court officials. His scheme really was spectacular. It was amazing and could not be any better. Gu Huaijiang earnestly said, Your Majesty, since Western Kuan has already made its move, requests permission to immediately set out with the army. Very well, then who will be brought along as Deputy General? Gu Huaijiang thought for a bit, Shubai and Zhougu. He was bringing Gu Shubai and Gu Jogu, and Gu Hanamo was already at the border. With this, only the young ones will remain at the manor. Emperor Ning felt a little uneasy. Ever since Gu Shubai nearly died to Yin Yan's plot, Gu Huaijiang had been very cautious, fearing that something might happen to his children. This time, he was putting his life on the line. It seemed as though he wanted Western Kun to suffer a massive loss, allowing for a few more years of peace at the border. He was moved and slowly nodded. Shubai is already the young general of the Gu family's army. Hand down our edict. We confer Gu Jogu the title of 4th-ranked cavalry general, and we confer Gu Hanamo the title of 4th-ranked guard general. They are to set out today. 2 titles were conferred in an instant. Gu Huaijiang was a subject who could be conferred no further titles, thus Emperor Ning showed his favor by rewarding his children. In a single manner, there were 4 with court titles, and there was one who had been conferred the title of princess. This was completely unprecedented. The court was filled with officials, but nobody dared to object. Some people glanced toward Imperial Censor Ji Daogong, hoping that he would step forward to say something and prevent Emperor Ning from showing too much favor to his generals. Ji Daogong ignored all of the looks. It was as if he had not heard or seen anything. He was old, but his eyes were exceptionally keen. He knew whom Emperor Ning should trust and whom he should show favor. Gu Huaijiang stepped forward and said, "This subject appreciates your Majesty's favor, but the 2 of them are a little too young and have not seen any actual battles. To directly promote them to 4th rank is a little too much for them. Would your Majesty please retract your edict?" He said everything that everyone else wanted to say, but it just made everyone feel ashamed. He, Gu Huaijiang, did not covet this sort of favor in the slightest. Emperor Ning waved his broad sleeve. "They're no longer too young. When you were 20, you were a young general who charged onto the battlefield. When Shubai was 20, he was able to lead soldiers on his own to hold the defensive line. Marquis Gu's manor is filled with good sons. We cannot allow them to be covered up by their brother and father's glory." With these words having been said, it was clear that his mind was made up. It would not be good for Gu Huaijiang to continue refusing. "This subject thanks your Majesty on my son's behalf. This matter must not be delayed. This subject will set out tomorrow morning and will bid farewell to your Majesty now. Farewell, Marquis Gu. You must return triumphant." The officials in court bowed, and Gu Huaijiang cupped his hands to return the gesture. Being watched by everyone's expectant gazes, he strode out of the hall. The luggage had been packed beforehand, and Gu Shubai and Gu Jogu were not nervous. They were just a little shocked. They initially thought that Gu Huaijiang would leave at least one of them behind to handle matters at home. Although we have made preparations for this battle beforehand, Father did not think that Western Kun would send out 100,000 troops for their initial assault. Zhu Guan and Wei Zhou are being attacked at the same time. The enemy is fighting on 2 fronts, and we can't say for certain that they won't choose a 3rd location. It could be said that this battle will determine the situation between Western Kun and Eastern Ling. You 2 should both go and take a look. As members of the military, they hated only talking about the movement of soldiers on paper. They would learn the most through action. Moreover, such a battle was exceedingly rare to come by. Gu Huaijiang called everyone to the main hall. Right before setting out, he gave many warnings and reminders, and everyone listened carefully. Gu Wenqing was sensible and said, "Since Father will be going with eldest brother and second brother, I will be sure to take good care of the manor's affairs and take care of my younger brothers and sister. Father and elder brothers, please do not worry. Go and return safely. You have always been very steady. Naturally, Father is not worried. Let Yu Fu help you take care of the manor's affairs. That way, you will have someone to work with." Gu Xiang and Gu Yi stood to the side and nodded. Hearing this, they immediately realized that something was off. "Father, Yu Fu is even younger than us. How come you're letting Yu Fu help fourth brother? What about us?" Yu Fu was a little surprised. Yu Fu had grown accustomed to having everything handed to her in Marquis Gu's manner and had never handled any of the manor's affairs. She thought that Gu Huaijiang was unable to find anyone to help Gu Wenqing, thus considered her. However, Gu Shubai suddenly looked at her with a smile. Another two conferred in an instant. Part 1. While the Board of Rites planned the wedding banquet for the two princesses, another letter was delivered from the border with haste. Western Kuan's army was 100,000 strong. The soldiers were already on the borders of Zhuguan and Weizhou. It was clear that the enemy had come prepared. With both rations and medicine prepared, the situation was dire. The officials were shocked. They never thought that this sort of news would come while they were preparing for joyous matters. It was truly unheard of. Western Kuan truly is ambitious. Sending a princess to improve relations was fake, and hiding the truth from us is the truth. Even wild beasts will look after their young, so for Emperor Kuan to give up his own daughter for the sake of deceiving us, it's truly too vicious. Your Majesty, please quickly dispatch Lord Marquis Gu to organize the troops and set out for Zhuguan and Weizhou. Emperor Ning waved his broad sleeve and remained calm. There's no need to worry. Marquis Gu has already made plans for this, sending out the third young sir to the border beforehand to command the troops. For the time being, there will be no danger. What? Gu Huaijiang already knew that Western Kuan was going to attack. Thinking back, Gu Huaijiang said that there was a secret military matter that he could only tell Emperor Ning about. It turned out to be this. The court officials let out a sigh of relief. They knew that with Gu Huaijiang present, Western Kuan was no cause for concern. Gu Huaijiang stepped forward and said, "This subject appreciates your Majesty's favor, but the two of them are a little too young and have not seen any actual battles. To directly promote them to 4th rank is a little too much for them. Would your Majesty please retract your edict?" He said everything that everyone else wanted to say, but it just made everyone feel ashamed. He, Gu Huaijiang, did not covet this sort of favor in the slightest. Emperor Ning waved his broad sleeve. "They're no longer too young. When you were 20, you were a young general who charged onto the battlefield. When Shubai was 20, he was able to lead soldiers on his own to hold the defensive line. Marquis Gu's manor is filled with good sons. We cannot allow them to be covered up by their brother and father's glory." With these words having been said, it was clear that his mind was made up. It would not be good for Gu Huaijiang to continue refusing. "This subject thanks your Majesty on my son's behalf. This matter must not be delayed. This subject will set out tomorrow morning and will bid farewell to your Majesty now." "Farewell, Marquis Gu. You must return triumphant." The officials in court bowed, and Gu Huaijiang cupped his hands to return the gesture. Being watched by everyone's expectant gazes, he strode out of the hall. The luggage had been packed beforehand, and Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu were not nervous. They were just a little shocked. They initially thought that Gu Huaijiang would leave at least one of them behind to handle matters at home. Although we have made preparations for this battle beforehand, Father did not think that Western Kuan would send out 100,000 troops for their initial assault. Zhuguan and Weizhou are being attacked at the same time. The enemy is fighting on two fronts, and we can't say for certain that they won't choose a third location. It could be said that this battle will determine the situation between Western Kuan and Eastern Ling. You two should both go and take a look. As members of the military, they hated only talking about the movement of soldiers on paper. They would learn the most through action. Moreover, such a battle was exceedingly rare to come by. Gu Huaijiang called everyone to the main hall. Right before setting out, he gave many warnings and reminders, and everyone listened carefully. Gu Wenqing was sensible and said, "Since father will be going with eldest brother and second brother, I will be sure to take good care of the manners affairs and take care of my younger brothers and sister. Father and elder brothers, please do not worry. Go and return safely. You have always been very steady. Naturally, father is not worried. Let Yu Fu help you take care of the manners affairs. That way, you will have someone to work with." Gu Xiang and Gu Yi stood to the side and nodded. Hearing this, they immediately realized that something was off. "Father, Yu Fu is even younger than us. How come you're letting Yu Fu help fourth brother? What about us?" Yu Fu was a little surprised. Yu Fu had grown accustomed to having everything handed to her in Marquis Gu's manner and had never handled any of the manners affairs. She thought that Gu Huaijiang was unable to find anyone to help Gu Wenqing, thus considered her. However, Gu Shubai suddenly looked at her with a smile. Chapter 252. Look at her once more before leaving. Part 2. Before the sun came up, the candles in the main hall were burning bright. Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu tidied up thoroughly. When they passed by the western wing on their way to the main hall, the two subconsciously stopped. Following this, the two exchanged a look. Gu Jiugu was a little embarrassed and quietly coughed. "You go ahead. There's still time. I will go ahead to the main hall and let father know. At the very least, this expedition would take many months and could extend to a year or two. He would definitely want to see Yu Fu before going." "Thanks." Gu Shubai did not act reserved, handing his sword to him. Turning around, he soared over the western wing's wall. It was too early. The western wing's gates had not yet been opened. The granny standing guard overnight heard the noise and walked out with a candle. Seeing that it was Gu Shubai, she hurried to wake Lian Zhu and Lian Bai, and Gu Shubai gestured for the two to remain quiet. "Don't wake her up. I will leave after seeing her." Lian Zhu and Lian Bai understood, placing a dim candle at the foot of Yu Fu's bed, then quietly retreating from the room. Yu Fu was in a deep sleep. The dim candlelight illuminated her face. Her pink lips were slightly parted, giving her a peaceful and serene appearance. Since it was the end of spring, she was covered in just a thin silk blanket. Gu Shubai carefully walked over to the side of the bed and picked up a woolen blanket, placing it on top of the silk blanket. While sleeping, Yu Fu seemed to notice that something was off and muttered a few words. He brought his face closer to try and hear what she was saying, but only heard her smacking her lips. Did this little girl not know that with him leaving today, she would not be able to see him for a long time? She was actually able to sleep so soundly. He plaintively scratched her nose a couple of times, then turned and carried the candle toward the door. "Eldest brother," in the end, he woke her up. Gu Shubai turned around and saw Yu Fu flip over and mutter with her eyes closed, "Eldest brother, eldest brother." It turned out that she was talking in her sleep. He quietly muttered to himself, "Who knows what's happening to me in her dream?" If not for the rush to depart, he really wanted to sit here until the sun came up. When she woke up, he could ask her about her dream. Unfortunately, he dotingly smiled in Yu Fu's direction, then quietly retreated from the room. "Eldest young sir." Yaolan walked over in a daze holding a sachet. "Young miss embroidered this for eldest young sir. She originally planned to give it to you during the new year, but a lot happened at that time, and she could not finish embroidering it in time. Young miss entrusted me with giving it to you." Gu Shubai received the sachet. The plum blossom pattern embroidered on it was suited to being worn during winter, but it was now the end of spring. On that winter day, in a daze, he recalled how his life was dangling by a thread in the forest in Changzhou. He recalled hiding in that pitch-black cave with Gu Yi, and he recalled Yu Fu's angelic figure appearing in that cave. He remembered how she worked day and night to take care of him. He recalled how she fed him medicine and food. All of these memories lingered in his mind. A unique medicinal smell dragged him back to the present. He brought the sachet up to his nose. It doesn't seem to be a common fragrance inside this sachet. What is inside? Yaolan also did not know. It was prepared by young Miss herself. This servant also does not know what it is. Why did she not give it to me herself? Young Miss said that eldest young sir would be leaving before the sun came up. At such a time, she might not be able to get up. Eldest young sir would surely be reluctant to wake her up. If that was the case, she would have this servant give it to you. Gu Shubai smiled. She did not hide anything, talking about things like whether or not he would be reluctant. However, Yaolan was feeling mischievous. What did young Miss see in your dream? I seem to have dreamed of eldest brother. He came to see me and said something to me. She felt her nose. The familiar feeling left her unable to determine whether it was a dream or reality. Lian Zhu and the others stood to the side. They did not urge her to go back to bed and simply waited for her to lie back down on her own. Yu Fu suddenly shouted, "Ah, this is bad. What time is it right now? Have the head general and the others set out yet?" Young Miss did not dream it. Eldest young sir did indeed come, but he has already left. Calculating the time, they should have already set out. Yu Fu hastily got out of bed and ran out. Lian Zhu only had time to put an outer garment on her shoulders. Young Miss, put something on before going out. If she waited until her clothes were properly put on, he would have already left. Wrapped in the garment, Yu Fu hastily ran toward the main hall. The only person inside was Qian, and he was tidying up. "Steward Qi, where are the head general and the others?" Seeing that Yu Fu was only wearing her pajamas, Qian was stunned and subconsciously pointed toward the main gate. "Lord Marquis and the two young sirs have already set out." Yu Fu hastily ran out. When she arrived at the gate, gasping for air, she was only able to see the rear of the long column of troops. The light from the torches created the image of a long dragon, and it was getting further and further away on this quiet night. Chapter 253 Not high-quality rice at all, Part 3, In a mountain with no tigers, the monkey was king. After Gu Huaijiang's group left, Marquis Gu's manor became the domain of monkeys, as Gu Xiang and Gu Yi messed around. Gu Wenqing was just as reassuring as always. He shouldered the burden of handling the manor's affairs, and when he had time, he would help Yu Guan with Yushan building. "Little Yu Fu, come quickly. There's something fun here." Gu Yi cheerfully ran over to the western wing. When the people of the western wing heard his voice, they knew that the sixth young sir had gained a new toy. Who knew that when they saw it, it was another kite? Yu Fu sat next to the table and just took a look. "Weren't we flying kites quite often a little while ago? Here I was thinking that it was something new, but it turned out to be kites again." She casually flipped through the book that she was holding, and Gu Yi tilted his head to take a look. It was a record of the manor's expenses. "Little Yu Fu, what are you looking at this for? How boring is that? Let's go out and fly kites. Whoever can knock the others out of the air while keeping their own flying wins." Gu Xiang also chimed in, "That's right. Let's go out and play. What's so fun about being kept inside by fourth brother to read records?" Yu Fu said, "It's not fourth brother keeping me in. I wanted to do it. When the head general left, he advised me to help fourth brother. With both of you going out to play, how pitiful is it for fourth brother to take care of the manor's affairs on his own." She did not understand too much, but she studied quite well, thus Gu Wenqing handed her the accounting reports to inspect. Gu Yi wanted to say a little bit more, but Gu Xiang secretly tugged on his sleeve. "Forget it. Let's not play either. How about we go to the kitchen to see what snacks are there, and we can have people bring them for Yu Fu and us to eat. While he spoke, he looked at Yu Fu. She should at least have time to eat snacks with them, right? Yu Fu nodded with a smile. All right, when you guys get back, I should have finished looking over the record, and we can eat snacks together. Gu Yi handed the kite to Yaolong and obediently followed Gu Xiang. Why did you not try persuading little Yu Fu a little more? She's still so young. She should go out and play. Who knows what father was thinking, insisting on having her help fourth brother with the manners affairs. Are you stupid? Gu Xiang walked in the direction of the kitchen and rolled his eyes at Gu Yi. You are worried about little Yu Fu, so could it be that father isn't? But little Yu Fu will eventually become our eldest sister-in-law, the wife of the heir to the manor. Sooner or later, she will need to learn to manage these matters. Oh. Gu Yi had a sudden realization, so it was like that. I was just saying, with how much father dotes on little Yu Fu, how could he be willing to have her work so much? The two arrived at the kitchen before they realized it. It was still early, and the kitchen had not yet begun preparing lunch, thus the chef and helping servants had quite a bit of free time. Upon seeing Gu Xiang and Gu Yi, they quickly came forward to greet them. Why have 5th young sir and 6th young sir personally come to the kitchen? If you want something to eat, you can just send a servant. Normally, they would have their personal servants come to fetch snacks. It was quite rare for the two of them to come, but they found that the chef seemed to look quite panicked. It was as though they did not want them to come. Gu Yi did not realize this and carelessly said, "We didn't really have anything in mind and just came to take a look. Are there any snacks that were already made?" Previously, they did not visit the kitchen very often and did not have a clear understanding of this place. It seemed that there was nothing untoward. Regardless of whether it was the vegetables or the meat, everything was in its rightful place. There did not seem to be anything missing. The chef with the cheeky smile said, "Young sirs, as you can see, I told you that there's nothing wrong, right? You two are overthinking it." No, if there really was no problem, what were they so worried for? Gu Xiang slowly looked around and only found a brown basket in the corner. The bright yellow tag on it had not yet been removed. This should be something brought in by the palace. He walked toward it, and the chefs wiped away some sweat. Is this the polished rice sent in by the palace? He stuck his hand into the rice and retracted it with a small pile in his palm, immediately understanding why these chefs were nervous. It was because the rice inside this basket was not polished rice from the imperial farm at all. Chapter 254 I didn't give permission, who dares leave? Part 4, what's the situation with this rice? Gu Xiang asked the chefs, and Gu Yi curiously stepped forward and felt it. What's wrong with this rice? This isn't polished rice from the imperial field. That rice is as white as snow, while this rice is faintly yellow. It's clear that it has been swapped out by someone. The chef hastily said, "5th young sir, you can't say it like that. This rice has been in the kitchen, and we have been watching it every day. How could it have been swapped out by someone? You two are young and don't understand. The rice currently looks like it is faintly yellow, but once it's boiled, it will be as white as snow." Gu Xiang immediately understood what he meant. Now that Gu Huaijiang and their older brothers were not at home, the servants were starting to slack off. These chefs were secretly taking the polished rice from the imperial fields and selling it. They were just bullying them by saying that they were young and did not understand. Coincidentally, Gu Xiang happened to know what polished rice looked like. That's impossible. I have seen imperial polished rice. It's already white before it's boiled. This absolutely is not polished rice. Impossible. 5th young sir, this is polished rice from the imperial farms. With the chef with the cheeky smile taking the lead, the other two chefs also gained some courage upon noticing that they did not understand a lot. That's right. Though young sir is a master, you can't just falsely blame us servants with no evidence. You guys. The rice rewarded by the imperial court was clearly stolen by you guys, yet you're saying that we're falsely blaming you? With the two sides arguing, the servants who worked in the kitchen heard the commotion and came over. For a while, they did not dare to say which side was right. The chefs were the ones who made the decision in the kitchen, while Gu Xiang and Gu Yi were masters of the manor who controlled nothing. The common saying was that the idle official is lower than the manager. The ones who knew about the situation with the rice also did not dare to speak up so carelessly. Gu Yi shouted, "Quickly go and call fourth brother to sort this matter. How can we tolerate a crime happening in our own home?" Nobody in the crowd moved, as the grannies looked at one another. Nobody dared to move. If they did not help the two young sirs, nothing would happen. If they did help the young sirs by testifying against the chefs, they would be ostracized by the kitchen staff. After much thought, they decided not to concern themselves with this matter and just watch on from the side. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi were the young sirs of a prominent family, so they have never argued with servants before. They were completely unable to get the upper hand against these chefs, as they argued until they were red in the face but still could not find themselves in an advantageous position. What happened? Yu Fu had finished looking through the records and noticed that they had been gone for a long time, thus she led a group of people over to take a look. Who knew that she would see an argument? Gu Xiang said, "Didn't we tell someone to go and find fourth brother? Little Yu Fu, why have you come? You go back first. The situation here is ugly, and it might taint your ears." Yu Fu said. Fourth brother and steward Qi went out to inspect the hamlets. They won't be back before it gets dark. After saying this, she looked around the group. It's almost time for lunch. It's one thing if the chefs have something else to do, but do you grannies intend to not make any food for us? The grannies immediately scattered, and the chefs exchanged a look. They thought to themselves that the words "something else to do" had a deeper meaning. The obedient-looking young miss had quite a piercing tone to her words, but what of it? No matter how fierce she was only 13 years old. She was just a little girl who did not understand anything. The lead chef continued to wear his cheeky smile. "Young miss, we also don't have anything to do." It's fifth young sir and sixth young sir who got excited and insisted on saying that we stole the Polish rice that came from the imperial farms. How could we dare to do such a thing? He looked up at the sky. Oh, young miss was talking about the time. Sure enough, it's time to make lunch. We will be going to prepare lunch now. Marquis Gu's manor received all manners of imperial rewards, and even the lowest level of servant knew that according to Eastern Ling's laws, stealing imperial rewards would result in the death penalty. The chef realized that he could no longer avoid it and straightened his neck, saying, "Young miss, this lowly one also can't remember." This lowly one was not originally a servant in Marquis Gu's manor. It's because my cooking was delicious that Lord Marquis brought me in from Tianxiang building. Also, even if this lowly one really did take the rice, wouldn't returning it just be fine? Recently, it's been the fourth young sir who has been managing the manor's affairs and has not troubled young miss with it. Gu Yi was so angry that he wanted to rush forward. This chef really was as shameless as they came. He said that the two of them were too young and did not understand anything, so he naturally did not think anything of the 13-year-old Yu Fu. Yu Fu was someone whom they treated as a pearl. How could she be allowed to suffer from being bullied? Gu Xiang stopped him and gave him a look. Yu Fu had a way to deal with this. It would be best if they did not interfere. By the way, I will be taking a day off every month, so there will be fewer updates. Will everyone be able to accept this? Chapter 255 Inheriting the Spirit of Marquis Gu's Manor, Part 1. Yu Fu walked toward the chef with a smile that did not look like a smile. Did you know that the manor does not always receive polished rice, and part of what is received belongs to me? His Majesty said that anything that the princesses residing in the palace should have, I too must have. The chef's expression froze. Turning to look at the golden tag on the basket, he could not tell if this was Yu Fu's portion or the reward for Marquis Gu's manor. Yu Fu knew that he could not tell. Even if the manor's affairs are none of my business, once you have touched my rice, is it still none of my business? The chefs with less courage standing to the side felt their knees become weak, and they were about to drop to their knees to beg for forgiveness, but they were stopped by the chef standing at the front. All of these chefs had been brought in from the outside. It was likely that they were already a group before they came to the manor, thus they had the courage to steal rice after coming to the manor. You worthless shit. The lead chef gave him a look, as his expression quickly changed, sitting on the ground and wiping away tears. Young miss, show some mercy. I have old folks and children to take care of at home. In any case, I have cooked in the manor for over a year. You can't bully me, a lowly chef, like this. Marquis Gu's manor has always shown compassion for the old and poor. You can't just take advantage of when the master is out to bully the servants. He was clearly the one who had stolen the rice, but he turned it around to say that Yu Fu was bullying him and used Marquis Gu's manor's reputation to pressure her. He thought that by using Marquis Gu's manor's reputation, he would be able to leave Yu Fu unable to do anything. This was the first time that Yu Fu had ever seen such shamelessness. She did not get annoyed. She just found it strange. Marquis Gu's manor has always shown compassion for the old and poor, and the servants of the manor have worked here for multiple generations. That is why they show such loyalty to Marquis Gu's manor. For example, Steward Chi, father and son have served in the manor and are shown respect by everyone in the manor. Then, for example, Chi Ting, the chef sitting on the ground froze. Who is Chi Ting? He had never heard of her. An old servant reminded him, Chi Ting was Steward Chi's daughter. Previously, she was the head servant in the young miss room. After that, she made mistakes and died. Died? The chef shuddered in fear, believing that it was Yu Fu who had killed Chi Ting. His eyes were suddenly filled with dread. Yu Fu said, in Marquis Gu's manor, the servants who have served for a long time are shown more face than the younger masters. Have you ever seen us treat the members of Steward Chi's family unfairly? But this isn't an excuse that you can use to pressure your masters. When have you ever seen Steward Chi dare to try and pressure us? People must have humility, or they will be humiliated. Her words intelligently protected the reputation of Marquis Gu's manor and refuted what these chefs were saying. This thoroughly convinced everyone. Young miss, please spare us. These chefs who were acting domineering just a moment earlier all dropped to their knees and begged for forgiveness. They no longer dared to act stubborn. Young miss, we did indeed steal that polished rice, but we still haven't had a chance to sell it before we were caught by the two young sirs. We will bring it back immediately and beg young miss for mercy. If other families were granted imperial rewards, they would carefully hide them in the warehouse and cover them with red cloth, but Marquis Gu's manor received all manners of imperial rewards, thus things like polished rice from the imperial farms were placed directly in the kitchen. They thought that with the masters of the manor gone, they could take advantage of this time to steal some to sell on the outside without anyone noticing. Even if it was discovered, nothing could happen to them. They never thought that Yu Fu would be so fearsome. Gui pointed at them and said, you're lucky that you still haven't sold it. Did you know that once you sold it, it would become a problem for the Imperial Censorate? Once that happened, no amount of begging would save you. The chefs kowtowed repeatedly and begged endlessly. Gu Xiang moved over to Yu Fu's side and whispered, "Little Yu Fu, how do you plan on dealing with them?" She would deal with them. It turned out that she was the root cause of this. Yu Fu said, "I was thinking that the servants of the manor have always followed the rules, but these sly people do not seem to have been servants for a long time. It turns out that they were brought into the manor for my sake. It turns out to be my fault." Gu Wenqing said, "Father was doting on you. If I dealt with them, it's inevitable that father will blame me when he returns. Since they're people who were brought in for your sake, it would be better if you dealt with them." The chefs listened to their conversation and started kowtowing in fear upon hearing what was said. "Young miss, have mercy. Young miss, have mercy." They would rather fall into the hands of the gentle Gu Wenqing than fall into the hands of this Princess Zhenjiang. Yu Fu glanced at Steward Qi, then let out a sigh. "Very well, then punish them by having them return as much of the rice as possible. Then return them to where they came from. They may bring back their own things and the things awarded to them by their masters. Each person will also be given 20 taels of silver as severance. This shall show that Marquis Gu's manor did not mistreat them." The chefs raised their heads in confusion. They could not understand. Why were servants who had stolen from their masters being given severance when being chased out? This was Marquis Gu's manor being the embodiment of kindness. Through Yu Fu's words and actions, she had inherited the spirit of Marquis Gu's manor. A glimmer of relief flashed through Steward Qi's murky gaze. Chapter 256 A Strange Attitude, Part 2. With the head of the manor away, it was hard to prevent this sort of theft from happening again. Gu Wenqing decided to have Qi Zhou the manor's servants. Those, like those chefs, who were brought in later and seemed problematic were all let go to prevent future problems. When he had to go out to handle daily matters, he had the servant seek out Yu Fu whenever there were any problems. All of the manor's affairs would be left to her. It had to be said that the future sister-in-law had much more talent in the area of managing the manor's affairs than he did. "Young miss, these invitations arrived at the manor today. Fourth young sir was too busy and told this servant to deliver it to you." Qi Zhou waved his hand with a smile, and the servant behind him carefully placed a stack of invitations on the table. Yu Gu glanced at him, feeling that the manor servants have had a strange attitude towards her in the past few days. Ever since she dealt with those chefs, everyone looked at her with more respect and less uncertainty. This many invitations. She retracted her gaze and casually flipped through the invitations. The majority were from the children of high-ranking court officials. It was likely that they wanted to use this opportunity while the head of the manor was away to improve relations with the younger generation. This was no good. Who knew which side their fathers took in court? Were they members of the eldest prince's faction, or were they members of the second prince's faction? Even if they were undecided and members of Emperor Ning's faction, she did not want to receive them. Fourth brother was already busy enough. How could he have the time to deal with these people? She could not just leave Gu Xiang and Gu Yi to receive them, right? She placed those invitations to the side and picked out a few from some familiar names. These seemed to be from the Madam of Commander Jean and the Madam of Commander Yen. With their husbands and sons leaving with the head general to fight in the battle, there will surely be plenty of inconveniences for them to deal with on their own. Steward Qi, send some reliable people to check up on them. That will save them the need to come to our manor and ask the younger generation for help. How could they possibly bring themselves to lose face like that? Qi Zhou was stunned. How did young miss know that they had troubles and needed to come and ask for help? Yu Fu placed those two to the side on their own. Based on Eastern Ling's customs, the madams have their own social circles. The people whom they interact with will surely also be the madams of other officials. But our manor doesn't have any madam, so they would never visit Marquis Gu's manor aside from when there is a banquet. Now that this has come, it can't possibly be to invite me for a chat, right? Chi Zhou had a sudden realization, so it was like that. It's no wonder I found these two invitations unfamiliar. I always felt it was strange but could not figure out why it felt strange. I will immediately send people to check up on the two manors. Ah, wait a moment. Yu Fu suddenly saw an invitation in the pile with a unique pattern. Picking it up to take a look, it had Kun Yuyang written on it. She let out a laugh. A dignified princess directly wrote her given name on the invitation. Yu Fu had lived in Eastern Ling for a long time, so she found it quite fresh to see the bold mannerisms of a girl from Western Kun. Western Kun's princess is a female guest. I will see her. These are frequent visitors to Marquis Gu's manor and cannot be declined so easily, so have fourth brother personally visit them. Just decline the rest, saying that things are messy here at the manor without the head of the manor present, so it's inconvenient to receive guests. Messy? Chi Zhou looked around. Under Gu Wenqing and Yu Fu's management, the manor was the same as it was before. Where was there any mess? Yu Fu looked at him with a smile and gave him a look. The latter immediately understood and had the servant behind him leave with the invitations. When Kun Yuyang brought up Ku Wushang, Yu Fu's expression changed. It seemed as though she did not like hearing his name. If anyone else had seen this expression, they would definitely stop bringing up that name, but Kun Yuyang was different. Yu Fu, do you not really like my imperial seventh brother? Is he not your junior disciple? When he was last in Eastern Ling, he did some bad things, and he used me to do some things that made me feel very uncomfortable. Yu Fu provided a simple explanation. Seeing Kun Yuyang's expression darken, she was worried that she misunderstood, but don't worry. He is him and you are you. I like your personality and won't take my frustration out on you just because you two are siblings. Kun Yuyang lifted her head and said, of course, I know that. Seventh brother does go way too far on some things, but he treats me quite well. My father emperor has too many children, and he himself might not remember all of my children. It might be because we were both of low birth that seventh brother took particularly good care of me. When he left Western Kun to go to Immortals Valley, I cried for a long time. It turned out that the two of them were connected in that way. Yu Fu said, but I heard that since he made the great contribution of toppling Eastern Ling's prime minister, he gained quite a bit of influence. Since he treats you well, why did he not stop Emperor Kun from sending you for a political marriage? With war breaking out on the border, everyone now knew that Kun Yuyang was a sacrifice sent by Emperor Kun. Her smile carried an unspoken secret. I came of my own volition. Seventh brother could not stop it. Rather than be bullied for the rest of my life in Western Kun, it would be better to come to Eastern Ling to seek out a better life. Thank the heavens and the earth that my bet paid off. Your ruler truly is a forgiving person. Chapter 257 The Fourth Teacup, Part 3. Kun Yuyang pulled out a gilded invitation from her pocket. My marriage to young Sir Ning has already been decided, and Emperor Ning did not trouble me. The wedding banquet will take place in 1 month. You absolutely must come. It turned out that she had come to deliver an invitation. All right, I will go. Your marriage and Princess Danyang's marriage will take place on the same day, but they should be in 2 different places, right? Yu Fu suddenly remembered that Kun Yuyang's and Princess Danyang's weddings would be on the same day. If she went to Kun Yuyang's, that would provide a justification for her not attending Princess Danyang's wedding. That was indeed quite good. Kun Yuyang shook her head. Young Sir Ning is a member of the imperial family. His Majesty said that with there being 2 weddings happening at the same time, which one should the members of the imperial family attend? As a result, both of them will be held inside the imperial palace. Yu Fu was a little disappointed. She did not want to see Yin Shua and Princess Danyang's wedding. Marriage was a joyous matter, but it was being used to bind two people who disliked each other. It was guaranteed to be a tragedy. Fortunately, there were Kun Yuyen and young Sir Ning. During the banquet at Chunhee Garden, he had offended Princess Danyang for her sake. It was clear that he truly wished to protect her. Kun Yunyang frowned. In truth, I don't want the two weddings to be held at the same time. Princess Danyang is the princess born of Eastern Ling's empress, so the wedding is sure to be grand. As for me, mine will look quite bad. Others would talk about her and talk about how she was benefiting from being associated with Princess Danyang. There would be people who would talk about how she was a chess piece sent out by Western Kun or that she was a spy. Yu Fu smiled. You look bad. The one who looks bad is clearly Princess Danyang. Ha! Why? Yu Fu said, did you forget about what happened at Chunhee Garden? Princess Danyang humiliated her future husband to such a degree, but Prime Minister Yin did not act in the way that she predicted and did not request for the marriage to be cancelled. At that time, there were so many children from aristocratic families who saw, but at the wedding, she still needs to put on a smile and pretend to get along with Prime Minister Yin. Tell me, would she not look bad? Kun Yuyang cheerfully said, that's right. Why did I not think of this? As for young Sir Ning, he doesn't look down on my identity at all. During the past few days, he has sent people to deliver gifts to me at the post house. Even for someone as unrestrained as her, she too became embarrassed at a time like this, and Yu Fu found it quite fun to watch. That's why there's no need for you to worry. Would it not be better to think about what accessories you should wear at that time? Yin Shua, that gutless bastard, is such a complete failure. I insulted him to such a degree in front of so many people, yet he still didn't go to Father Emperor to ask for the engagement to be cancelled. For the sake of the influence that comes from being my husband, he's really willing to forsake all face. In the Western Palace, Princess Danyang had smashed 3 teacups, hit 5 palace maids, and insulted Yin Shua countless times. She had said all of the nastiest things that she could, but Yin Shua did not have the slightest reaction. Not only did he not go to ask Emperor Ning to cancel the engagement, but she had also heard that he was preparing at his manor for the wedding. In the past, she had not realized that he was such a shameless person. The second prince was growing annoyed from listening to her. What's the point of smashing things here? Yin Shua was never a normal person, so I will advise you to stop. If he ever regains influence and remembers how you humiliated him, I fear that you will not have a good time. He had tacitly agreed to Princess Danyang's plan to humiliate Yin Shua in order to achieve the goal of having the engagement cancelled, but now he had changed his stance. A young man full of vigor capable of remaining stoic after being humiliated to such a degree by his future wife was someone who could eventually make it big. It was possible that he could still have a great turn of luck. There was no need to completely tear him down. Emperor Ning rolled his eyes. It's because we have made no progress even after looking them over tens of times that we are feeling anxious. You old thing, you just came to make fun of us, haven't you? How could this servant dare? Eunuch Gao knew that Emperor Ning was tired and deliberately bantered with him. This old servant was just worried about your Majesty's eyes and that the officials might laugh that they've become sunken in. Lord Ji has come, so how about your Majesty chats with him a little? Ji Daogong had come. Emperor Ning put the list down and heavily leaned back in his chair. Quickly invite him in. It's getting hotter and hotter, so don't just leave him standing outside. Ji Daogong walked in and happened to hear Emperor Ning's words, saying with a smile, "Many thanks for your Majesty's concern." With the eaves of the roof, this old servant would not suffer from the sun. He spoke while walking over, and his eyes landed on the pile of ice in the room. With the days getting hotter, it's also normal for your Majesty to get tired from looking over reports. But it's also best to avoid using the ice piles too much. Your Majesty is no longer young. Be careful not to catch a cold. Emperor Ning waved his hand. and the eunuchs in the room moved the pile of ice to a corner away from Ji Daogong's spot. "Old Ji, don't worry. Our health is perfectly fine. It's just that the matter of the cabinet is causing a headache. That's why we had them bring in the ice to get rid of the heat." Ji Daogong let out a sigh. After Lord Marquis Gu left, Your Majesty doesn't even have someone to talk to and has no choice but to shut yourself in the imperial study. This old servant does not feel comfortable with watching this. Chapter 258 Completely Alone, Part 4. Emperor Ning heaved a sigh and stood up from behind his desk. He looked out through the window, and the bright sunlight shone on the ground with the sound of cicadas chirping in the distance. "Is it almost time for the Dragon Boat Festival?" "Your Majesty, today is the day of the Dragon Boat Festival. Did you not eat the zongzi?" It was already the Dragon Boat Festival. Carefully calculating the days, it had already been over a month since Gu Huaijiang had left for the border. Emperor Ning glanced at Eunuch Gao, and the latter said with difficulty, "This old servant asked Your Majesty this morning, and Your Majesty said that you wanted to eat the usual, thus this old servant did not bring them out." Emperor Ning thought back for a moment. This did indeed seem to have happened. How can we not eat zongzi for the Dragon Boat Festival? We did not hear you clearly. You should have reminded us about it." Ji Daogong smiled and said, "Your Majesty has been busy with the matter of appointing members to the cabinet." With a constantly troubled expression, how could Eunuch Gao dare to trouble Your Majesty? Eunuch Gao gave him a look of gratitude. "Many thanks for speaking objectively for this old servant, Lord Ji." "Hey, look at him." Emperor Ning pointed at him. "You've even formed a group to go against us. Are you saying that we are not objective? Has Princess Danyang also not come to visit?" During previous Dragon Boat festivals, she would always come and deliver a personally embroidered pouch. The pouches given during the Dragon Boat Festival would be filled with wormwood and sagebrush leaves. There would also be some fragrances meant to ward off poisons and ill omens. In the past, the members of the imperial harem and the princesses would vie for the chance to give him a pouch. However, he did not see a single one this year. He did not wish to see imperial consort Xian and others like her, having Eunuch Gao stop them outside, but he did not tell Eunuch Gao to stop Princess Danyang. Ji Daogong said, "Your Majesty, do not blame Princess Danyang. She is currently in the middle of preparing for the wedding. She barely even has enough time to embroider her wedding dress, so how could she have the time to embroider a pouch for Your Majesty?" There was nobody as objective in court as Ji Daogong. When Emperor Ning heard what he had to say, his heart filled with fatherly love. When a princess of the imperial family got married, there was no need for her to embroider her own wedding dress. Everything from clothing to accessories would be provided by the Board of Internal Affairs and the Board of Rights. He had an idea of what Princess Danyang was busy with. "We have put ourselves into a position to be completely alone. Who knows what my two eldest sons are thinking, and our most beloved daughter is no longer close with us, blaming us for engaging her to the wrong person. We have both sons and daughters, as well as plenty of concubines in the inner palace, but we are no better than lonely old men." Princess Danyang hosted a banquet at Chunhee Garden, and everyone knew that she used that opportunity to humiliate Yin Shuo. Naturally, Emperor Ning also knew about it. He just pretended not to know unless Yin Shuo truly ran over to seek him out to cancel the engagement. Fortunately, Yin Shuo was a loyal official and did not do as Princess Danyang had hoped. He did not do something that would not benefit him or anyone else. By establishing a cabinet, Your Majesty is openly reducing Prime Minister Yin's power. By keeping the original plan of engaging Princess Danyang to Prime Minister Yin, it's to try and console Prime Minister Yin, right? These were the words used by Emperor Taizong to praise the virtuous official Wei Jing, and Ji Daogong cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty's praise is too much." In truth, your Majesty's mirror is Lord Marquis Gu. At most, this old official is just using my seniority to admonish the officials on your Majesty's behalf. This is your best attribute. You do not get jealous. You are not biased. You are completely fair. If the members of court were more like you and Huaijiang, we would not be so lonely. Ji Daogong raised his head and momentarily froze. He knew that Emperor Ning was talking about the eldest prince and the second prince. There were many members of court who were part of the two princes' factions. Emperor Ning was suspicious of the two and naturally was reluctant to place his trust in the officials who were close with them. But relying on him alone, how long would it take to finish filling out the cabinet? He lowered his head once more. His snow-white beard was like a willow, perfectly still. Actually, we want to establish a cabinet, but it's not just because of Yin Shuo. We have been thinking of this for quite some time. By spreading out the Prime Minister's power, even if he becomes part of any faction, it will not directly threaten our court. Chapter 259 How to Make Conversation, Part 5, Slow down, slow down. Don't hang the celebratory curtain crooked. Early in the morning, Yin Jiao awoke with a shock, hearing the loud voices come from her yard. Pear entered the room with a copper basin. As the bead curtain made a loud sound, young Miss woke up. She listlessly responded, "What's the ruckus outside? There's so much noise outside." It's the steward leading the servants in decorating the manor. Our courtyard's garden is already decorated with red curtains. Princess Danyang has a noble status, and the eldest young sir said that we must be sure to decorate everything properly. Princess Danyang humiliated him in front of everyone, but not only did he not seek His Majesty to have the engagement cancelled, he actually had the manor decorated so exquisitely. Since when has our manor's eldest young sir ever had such a good temperament? Pear thought for a bit and suddenly shuddered, recalling the girl who had been beaten silly and was carried out on that rainy day. Yin Jiao seemed to understand what she was thinking, as she also became stiff. After a long pause, she received the handkerchief that Pear was holding and haphazardly wiped her face. Forget it. The manor is a mess, and I don't want to stay here. Let's go out. Go out? Where? Yin Jiao very rarely went out, and she did not have many friends. When she went out in the past, it was always with Gu Jiugu. Now that Gu Jiugu was leading soldiers in battle at the border, where could she go? Yin Jiao deftly changed her clothes. I heard that when the second young sir left, he left Miss Yao Yu in the care of Yushan Building's shopkeeper, Yu Guan. I was thinking of going to see Miss Yao Yu, so going to Yushan Building would be quite nice. Then let's go to Yushan Building. Pear grimaced. In her eyes, Yao Yu was just a seductress who was stealing her young Miss Man. Moreover, she was a prostitute. She did not hope for her young miss to interact with her too much. Yin Jiao slightly raised an eyebrow. She already had a bit of insight on this matter. Young miss, do you want to go out? Just after exiting her courtyard, a granny came over to greet her. Yin Jiao looked closely and noticed that it was Yin Shuo's personal granny. Pear said, "Oh, young miss I wanted to walk around the manor a little and see what their newlywed courtyard looks like." Yin Jiao interrupted Pear, and the latter glanced at her before nodding to the granny. "That's right. Young miss wanted to walk around a little." The granny said, "That's good." Young sir invited young miss to the outer study. "Please come along." The outer study. It was no wonder the granny was so courteous to her today. If Yin Shuo was inviting her to the outer study, he definitely had orders for her, right? Very well, I will go immediately. When she arrived at the outer study, Yin Shuo was seated behind his usual desk. That seat previously belonged to Yin Yan. She casually sat down next to the desk and saw that Yin Shuo was holding a booklet. It had a long list of names written on it. Yin Shuo did not even look up. This is a list of officials that I currently believe are most likely to be selected for the cabinet. This time, His Majesty did not ask for anyone's opinion when selecting members of the cabinet. Whether it was me, the eldest prince, the second prince, or even the members of the inner palace, he deliberately avoided all of us. He deliberately avoided you, yet eldest brother was still able to get this list of names. You truly are exceptionally crafty. Her words carried a sarcastic tone, and it was not as though Yin Shuo could not hear it. Jiao, why do I feel as though you have become dyed in Gu Jioga's carefree attitude from spending so much time with him? For a man, having this sort of attitude is tolerable, but it's not a great thing for a woman to have. Yin Jiao furrowed her brow even more upon hearing this description. When Yin Yan told her to get close to Gu Jiogu, was it not just because he found him to be the most unrestrained of the young sirs in Marquis Gu's manner? However, reality proved that Gu Jiogu was not at all that sort of person. Using beauties against him was pointless. He never overstepped his bounds when it came to her, nor would he reveal any of Marquis Gu's manor's secrets to outsiders. He was a man with a very clear plan. As for this Chen Chuxiu, whether he was truly a licentious son of a wealthy family or not, she did not know. Eldest brother wants me to find out whether or not His Majesty intends to have Lord Qin join the cabinet. Yin Shuo nodded. If you can learn some more, for example, who will most likely join the cabinet with him, that would be even better. Yin Jiao was a bit reluctant, but the Prime Minister's manor and the Qin manor did not really have any interactions before this. How should I get close to young Sir Qin? It would be better to wait for eldest brother's wedding with Princess Danyang. At that time, Imperial Censor Qin will definitely bring his darling son with him. When Princess Danyang was brought up, Yin Shuo's expression instantly turned ugly. No, I can't wait that long. Chen Chuxiu will be riding a leisure boat this afternoon at West Lake. You go too. At that time, find an excuse to start a conversation. He looked at Yin Jiao sideways. You don't need me to teach you how to talk to men, right? Chapter 260 Seductress, Part 1. In the afternoon, the sun's rays shone down from the west and illuminated everything around Leifeng Pagoda with a halo of light hovering in the sky. The summer breeze was cool, causing ripples in the river and lifting the willow tree's branches. The leaves on the lake bunched together, and the flowers swayed. A small boat drifted among the flowers on the lake, as a young man's hearty voice rang out, as expected of West Lake in the middle of the 6th month, the scenery is truly different than during the rest of the year. The lotus leaves on the horizon creates an endless sea of green, and under the setting sun, a gorgeous scarlet. A girl's voice came from inside the boat's cabin, young Sir Qin, it's currently the 5th month. The 5th month. What poems were there about the 5th month? Farmers have very little free time, and the 5th month was especially busy. No, this poem was completely uninteresting and was not fit for being recited right now. Chen Chuxiu searched through his mind but could not think of a suitable poem to salvage the situation. Turning his head, he smiled awkwardly. Miss Yao Yu, you know that I'm not much of a scholar, so please don't trouble me. After saying this, he clambered into the cabin and headed toward the back. He casually leaned back and kicked his legs up. Yao Yu held a pipa in her lap and faintly smiled. What song would young Sir Qin like to listen to? I don't want to listen to a song. Miss Yao Yu, Chen Chuxiu lifted his head and saw Yao Yu holding her pipa. It looked as if they had grown up together, thus he placed her pipa to the side. Don't be so busy. Be like me and lay down. Breathe in the fresh air from the lake. Nobody will come during the afternoon. This place is both quiet and beautiful. It's most suited for someone who has just recovered from illness. Yao Yu was stunned. After a long pause, she finally said, "Many thanks, young Sir Chin, for your kind intentions, but I cannot accept undeserved payment. Yao Yu will bid you farewell." "Ah, that's no good." Chen Chuxiu sprang up from the deck of the boat. "I just want to enjoy the scenery of the lake, smell the fragrance of the flowers, and chat with you." "Is that no good? You just recovered from a serious illness, and I don't want you to tire yourself with playing the pipe. I know that you have feelings for the second young sir of the Gu family, and I know that you only sell your craft and not your body. That's why I specifically made an appointment with you to come out this afternoon. Though there are no other people here, are you still afraid that I would do something to you in broad daylight?" With him speaking so openly, Yao Yu became a little embarrassed. But Yao Yu has accepted young sir's money and cannot be too carefree. How about this? Young sir lays down and enjoys the scenery. While enjoying the scenery, you can listen to my music. If I get tired from playing, I will rest. Is this fine? All right then. Chen Chuxiu lay back down, and the sound of Yao Yu's pipa entered his ears. She had closed her doors and turned away clients for a long time. After Gu Jiugu left, she recovered from her illness, yet she still refused to go out and entertain clients. With nobody to protect her, she was afraid that she would run into problems. But Chen Chuxiu was different. This youth was only 18 years of age, and rumors had spread that he was a licentious son of a wealthy family. Yao Yu had entertained him a few times and knew that he was very proper, thus she was willing to come out to see him. After playing one song, Yao Yu felt a little tired. Leaning against the cabin, she chatted with Chen Chuxiu about poetry, music, and miscellaneous things. From time to time, she would be brought to laughter by Chen Chuxiu's jokes, and the latter felt quite satisfied. Eventually, he fell asleep. Yao Yu did not disturb him. Seeing the sunshine on his face, she covered his eyes with a silk handkerchief to keep him from being woken up by the light. Something as rare and pleasant as this moment of idleness should not be disrupted by anyone. This was true for her and also true for Chen Chuxiu. He self-mockingly thought to himself that if Gu Jiugu had not left, how could he possibly have any chance of inviting Yao Yu out? Chapter 261 Venting for Her, Part 2. It turned out that he was not sleeping and was just pretending. Shrieks came from the girls on the boat next to them, as Pei stepped out and shouted, "Who are you? You actually dared to kic our boat. Do you know?" She looked at Chen Chuxiu's face. The longer she looked, the more she felt that something was off, and she could not continue saying what she wanted to say. The young man before her looked very familiar. He looked more and more like the picture that the eldest young sir had given the young miss. Young Sir Chen. Yao Yu came out of the cabin, wanting to stop Chen Chuxiu. On the other side, Yin Jiao heard her voice and also came out. Young Sir Chen. It was quite a coincidence that they would run into a young Sir Chen, but was it the Chen Chuxiu that they were looking for? Looking behind him, they saw Yao Yu. Master and servant were both stunned. Yao Yu must have heard their earlier conversation. Chen Chuxiu folded his arms over his chest and rudely sized up Yin Jiao. "Which family's young miss are you? Looking at you, you should be from a prominent family, so how can you say such rude things?" Yao Yu awkwardly stepped forward to stop him. "Young Sir Chen, it's not like that. Young Miss Yin and I know each other. There is a misunderstanding here. Please do not make a fuss over it." Know each other? Chen Chuxiu thought back. The maidservant earlier had mentioned Gu Jiugu and immediately understood. So it was another one of second young Sir Gu's admirers, young Miss Yin. There are very few in court with the surname Yin. Would the young miss happen to be Prime Minister Yin's younger sister? At this point, Yin Jiao had regained her wits and had an understanding of the identity of the young man before her. "Greetings, young Sir Chin. Chen Chuxiu sneered and said with disdain, "Young Miss was asked by Prime Minister Yin to come and find me, but may I ask what for?" He already knew why. Aside from the battle at the border, the biggest movement in court was the establishing of the cabinet. His father, Imperial Censor Qin, was a top candidate for the cabinet. Yin Shua had his younger sister come to get close to him, and the purpose was self-evident. Yin Jiao's expression became awkward. She had indeed come to get closer to Chen Chuxiu, but this was discovered by the other side before she even had a chance to act. It was all her fault for being too careless, thinking that nobody was on the lake. The boat next to theirs had been stopped in place for a long time with no movement, thus it had to be an empty boat. Who knew that the person that she and Pear were talking about was inside that boat, and it was both people? Yin Jiao was unable to speak, but Yao Yu was very adept at observing people's expressions. She nodded and said, "Since young Miss Yin has come to see young Sir Chen with a matter, Yao Yu will bid farewell first. Please take your time. How do you plan on leaving? Do you have a boat to get back?" Chen Chuxiu was verbally plaintive, but the look in his eyes was gentle. Just as Yin Jiao was thinking about leaving, she heard him say, "How about young Miss Yin waits for me for a while? I will have the helmsman send Miss Yao Yu back first, then come back to find you. How does that sound?" Yin Jiao was caught off guard. Even after such a mess, Chen Chuxiu was still willing to talk to her. It seemed that he only knew that she had been sent by Yin Shua to seek him out but did not know her true mission. She needed to think carefully about how to reply properly. "Very well, young Sir Chen, you go ahead." "Miss Yao Yu, just now, it was Pear who spoke rudely. I hope that you will be magnanimous and forgive her." He said that he wanted to have the Yin family's siblings suffer a little, but what would this suffering be? Yin Jiao was Gu Jioga's friend, and Yao Yu was a little worried, but young Miss Yin is still a girl. Even if she has any schemes, they were drawn up by her elder brother. How are they related to her? Getting close to him was her elder brother's plot, but insulting Yao Yu and calling her a seductress behind her back was not a false accusation, right? Chen Chuxiu did not say it out loud. He knew that Yao Yu was kind-hearted, thus said, "Don't worry. I have a sense of measure." Yao Yu pursed her lips. She did not feel that Chen Chuxiu had a sense of measure, but this was a matter pertaining to court affairs. She just knew that based on her own status, she should not concern herself with it. The shore drew closer and closer. After the helmsman lifted the bamboo oar and placed it on the dock, the boat came to a stop. Yao Yu stood up and swayed with the rocking of the boat. Chen Chuxiu immediately stood up and reached out to support her. "Don't be so reserved. Go back and rest well." He had deliberately avoided bodily contact. Even when supporting her, he simply held her at arm's length, paying close attention to his distance. Yao Yu gratefully looked at him, "Then Yao Yu will be going first." Chapter 262 Image completely ruined, Part 3, Young Miss Yin, I've made you wait a long time. Chen Chuxiu very quickly returned to the center of the lake where they first met, and Yin Jiao's boat was still waiting there. She was quite happy to see him return. He sneered internally. Lifting his head, he looked over at Pear, who was at Yin Jiao's side. "Young Miss Yin, I find that maidservant to be displeasing. Young Miss Yin, I invite you to come and speak in the cabin of my boat." After saying this, he climbed into the cabin of his boat and left her with no room to negotiate. Pear grabbed her. "Young miss, bachelors and unmarried girls should not spend time together. What would we do if he does something improper to young miss?" Yin Jiao unhappily pushed her hand away. "Is this not your fault? I already told you that you are not allowed to talk about Miss Yao Yu that way. If not for you saying what you did, why would young Sir Chen not want to see you? You stay here and wait for me to return." She crossed over onto Chen Chuxiu's boat, and the helmsman gently pushed the two boats apart. Pear pouted and remained in place. Thinking about how Yin Jiao would not be returning for some time, she decided to just go back inside the cabin. "Young Miss Yin, come and sit." The furnishings inside the cabins were very casual, and Chen Chuxiu himself was laying casually on the deck of the cabin. To his side were a couple of teacups. One was in front of an empty seat, and it was immediately clear that it was where Yao Yu had been sitting. Yin Jiao paused for a moment, then sat down in that seat and inconspicuously pushed the cup of tea away. Chen Chuxiu fiddled with a handkerchief and was in a good mood but did not look at Yin Jiao. "I have grown accustomed to being laid back. If young Miss Yin wishes to drink tea, pour it yourself." Yin Jiao smiled politely while looking around but did not see any additional cups. Did he want her to use the cup that Yao Yu had just used? Considering their romantic rivalry, Yin Jiao did not touch the teacup. "It's fine. I'm not thirsty." Young Serchin really has an aesthetic sense. When others go sailing on the lake, they do so at night. As a result, there are countless people on the lake that creates a chaotic scene. Young Serchin choosing to come in the evening when the lake is quiet allows for the scenery to be properly enjoyed. She truly was a well-read daughter from a noble family. In just a few words, she showed her class and also cleverly flattered Chen Chuxiu. The young man laying on the deck suddenly sat up straight. He carefully placed the handkerchief into his lapel. "Didn't young Miss Yin say that Prime Minister Yin had a matter that he wanted you to come and see me for? It would be better to say it directly. That will keep us from having to deal with more people showing up as it gets later into the night." Yin Jiao did not think that he would be so direct and was momentarily stunned, not knowing how to respond. Chen Chuxiu laughed. "Forget it. I already know without you needing to respond. Since young Miss Yin wants something from me, you should know that you need to provide some sort of payment, right?" He leaned closer to Yin Jiao and provocatively lifted Yin Jiao's chin. Yin Jiao was caught off guard. "Pay, what?" On the other side, Yao Yu walked along the bank of the lake and suddenly stopped. Chen Chuxiu did not have a wicked heart, but his actions were always outside of what others expected. If he did something improper to Yin Jiao, how could that be good? As she turned around, the sky was starting to darken. A group of boats were parked on the shore nearby, waiting to do business once it got darker. She randomly waved to a helmsman. "Boatman, I want to go to the middle of the lake, just over there. Can you bring me there?" She pointed off into the distance. In the middle of the lake, there were no other boats aside from those belonging to Chen Chuxiu and Yin Jiao, thus the boatman immediately saw them. "All right, girlie. Climb on. I am the Prime Minister's younger sister. What do you intend to do? Do you think I'm stupid? Even if I disrespect you here, the Prime Minister can do nothing about it. Who knows, he might even be happy to have one favor with my powerful Qin family. If you fell into the water and died, I would have a lot of trouble to deal with. It would be better to take you as a concubine after this. My Qin family can still afford that much." He emphasized the word concubine, and Yin Jiao found the humiliation unbearable. "The daughter of the dignified Prime Minister's manor, am to be your concubine? Don't even think about it. Even if I die, I will not allow you to make it a reality." "Oh. If rice is cooked, it cannot be turned back. We'll see if it can happen or not." With a tearing sound, he ripped Yin Jiao's top off and forcefully pushed her to the deck. "Young Sir Qin, stop." Yao Yu barged into the cabin. Seeing what was unfolding, her eyes grew wide. Chen Chuxiu's eyes grew even wider. Oh no, the image that he had maintained in front of Yao Yu had been ruined. Smack! While he was distracted, Yin Jiao sat up and fiercely slapped him across the face. Chapter 263 When Will That Day Come? Part 4. "Young miss, what happened to you?" Yin Jiao arrived back at the Prime Minister's manor, and Peyer helped her inside. The partially dried blood trail on her forehead was especially frightening. When the gatekeeper saw this, he was given a fright. This old servant will immediately send for an imperial physician. For a girl's face to be wounded was no small matter. Yin Jiao had not yet gotten married, so it would be bad if this injury resulted in a scar. No need. Yin Jiao's voice was cold. "I want to go and sleep. Nobody is to disturb me." Nobody was to disturb her. The servants pondered what she meant. The manor only had 2 masters remaining. When she said that nobody was to disturb her, was that not just saying that the eldest young sir should not disturb her? On the surface, the servants complied, but once Yin Jiao left, they immediately went to the study to report to Yin Shuo. In the end, the servants understood very clearly who made the final decisions in the manor. Yin Jiao fell asleep in her clothes and was awoken by a sharp pain in her forehead after an unknown span of time. An unfamiliar man's face loomed large in front of her. She subconsciously slapped him away. Impudence. Mysteriously, the man who had been slapped stood up and looked at Yin Shuo in confusion. The latter walked over to the side of the bed. "Jiao, this is the doctor who has come to treat you. Don't move and let him treat the injury to your forehead. It would not be good if it left a scar." A doctor, it turned out that he was a doctor. Yin Jiao's expression turned as cold as ice. "If it scars, let it scar. With a scar, eldest brother won't have me be a honey trap." Yin Shuo's expression immediately turned ugly. He then turned and saw the doctor look away and pretend not to hear anything. It was fortunate that he had not allowed for an imperial physician to be called and had instead gotten a normal doctor. If any mention of a honey trap made it into the court, he would have a big problem on his hands. "Doctor, how is the wound to her head?" The doctor regained his wits, replying to Lord Prime Minister, "The young miss wound is from bumping against a wooden table. As long as the ointment is applied properly, it will be fine. This lowly one will also prescribe a calming medicine, and she will recover in a few days." "Calming?" The doctor said, "That's right. The young miss has suffered from a shocking situation, and that does nothing to help her recover. Once her mental situation is stable, her external injuries will recover faster." In the end, something had happened to her. She had been wounded and suffered a mental shock. Yin Shuo furrowed his brow and coldly said, "We've trouble, doctor. The maidservant who takes care of the young miss got hurt from bumping into a door. That's why we brought doctor in to treat her. The payment will not be much, but I hope that doctor will accept." An old servant stepped forward and gave the doctor a large silver ingot. The doctor's eyes immediately lit up. Yes, 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 this lowly one came in to treat a maidservant. As for anything else, I do not know anything. Lord Prime Minister, please do not worry. After he left, Yin Shuo dismissed all of the maidservants in the room. "What exactly happened today? I told you to get close to Chenchusho to get information, so how did you end up like this?" Yin Jiao stared at him. "He wanted to force himself on me, and when I tried to escape, he caught me. At that time, I hit my head on a table." Yin Shuo's expression changed but quickly returned to normal. In the end, there was a look of hope. Smack! Yin Shuo calmly slapped her. "Do you know what you're saying?" It was deathly quiet. Yin Jiao did not speak, as the blood from the wound on her forehead dripped onto the brocade blanket, wetting an intricate embroidery of a cherry flower. In the end, they were still siblings, and Yin Shuo found it a little unbearable. "I have already told you about the Yin family's current plight. You have lived in comfort for over a decade, so you will not be able to avoid the burden that you must bear. But don't worry. I will get revenge for you on Chenchusho for his improper conduct toward you." Yin Jiao hung her head, resembling a strawman on its last legs after being knocked over by a storm. Inshuo thought that she would not respond, turning around and leaving. That day, when will it be? Yin Jiao's voice was hoarse, as she suddenly spoke. Of course, this was referring to regaining power in court, collapsing Marquis Gu's manor, and returning to being below one and above all others. Inshuo stopped in his tracks but did not say before continuing out. Chapter 264 Fight for the Sake of the Younger Generation, Part 5. Western Kuan's army stretches up to the Qinling mountain range in the north through Weizhou and Zhuguan. Head General's judgment was correct. They want to open up 2 battlefronts. Inside the military tent hung a map of the border region, while the 2 walls to its side were covered by their military banner. Below the banners sat 2 rows of military officers. Gu Huaijiang held his sword and drew a line from Weizhou to Zhuguan, then all the way north. His mind was filled with the situations of the various cities along the way. How large was their population? How much food did they have stored? How many soldiers were stationed there? After so many years of fighting, all of these conditions were committed to memory to give himself a foundation to work from. In this battle, Western Kuan's path to victory relies on surprise attacks with their cavalry and through their numbers. To the first point, we are already prepared for their attack. To the second point, as the defenders, being at a numerical disadvantage will not create too much of a problem. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. Based on the current conditions, there will be nothing unusual about this battle other than the large numbers of troops involved. Lao Jin slapped the table. That's right. Haven't we followed the head general into all manners of dangerous battles before? What can this even be considered? Ha ha ha. Gu Huaijiang did not say anything, as he looked at the various cities on the border. Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu stood to the side in their armor and did not agree with Lao Jin's opinion. Before setting out, Gu Huaijiang had told them that this would be a once-in-a-lifetime war. It would be something that would scarcely come about once every 100 years, so how could it be so simple? Everyone. Gu Huaijiang turned around, and everyone suddenly stopped laughing, waiting for him to continue. He looked at every single person in the room. Everyone has grown accustomed to being passive and taking blows from Western Kuan, and that's why you're able to feel satisfied with just pushing Western Kuan's army away. Is that not right? The smiles disappeared from everyone's faces. To members of the army, being passive and taking blows was a matter of great humiliation. But Gu Huaijiang was right. When Western Kuan launched their assault on Eastern Ling's border, they had fought them off. They had chased them away from the border, which made it their victory. Lao Jin said with great difficulty, but didn't head general say that our Eastern Ling is a polite society that absolutely will not do something like invading another country? His Majesty has also stated this in court. That's why we treated Western Kuan's special envoys so well, even though we knew that they had wicked intentions. That was why they never even considered what they could do aside from passively defending. Gu Huaijiang smiled. Lao Jin was a war hawk, and he had always complained about Emperor Ning's priority on peace. Things are different now. My Eastern Ling favors peace, but Western Kuan continues in its bullying ways and continuously invades our Eastern Ling's borders. I, Gu Huaijiang, am a scholarly general, but I have been given no other choice than to invade Western Kuan's territory. Do you understand? What? He wanted to set foot on Western Kuan's territory. The atmosphere inside the tent immediately became joyous. They had followed Gu Huaijiang and protected the border for many years, but they have never seen what Western Kuan's border cities look like. They have been wanting to go and take a look for a long time. If this sort of talk had been brought up before, they would surely be given a stern scolding by Gu Huaijiang. They would be told that they were soldiers meant to protect the country and its people. Were they bandits who would invade another country and use force to steal? This time, it was Gu Huaijiang who brought it up. They were so happy that they almost did not dare believe it. Yan Hua was the steadiest of the officers present. While he was elated, he very quickly calmed back down. Head General, you have never agreed to launch an assault on Western Kuan, saying that if we did it, we would be no different from Western Kuan's barbarians. Why have you suddenly changed your way of thinking? This was also something that many in the tent wanted to ask. Gu Huaijiang fell silent for a moment, recalling a moment from the past. His mind flew far, far into the past. When I was 17, I followed my father to battle. At that time, I was the same as Yan Jing and the others, hiding outside the tent to eavesdrop on what the generals were talking about while thinking that the adults inside did not know. Everyone's eyes instantly turned to the entrance of the tent, and Yan Hua strode out of the tent. Sure enough, he found Yan Jing sneakily hiding outside. Gu Shubai nearly died through one of his plots. At his age, he did not want to be in a position where he had to stay at home due to old age and send his sons off to war. Rather than that, it would be better to just press on and finish things decisively. Hand Western Kuan a decisive defeat and leave their army afraid to invade ever again. Father. Gu Shubai stepped forward. Son is the young general of the Gu family army. The burden cannot be borne by father alone. Gu Jiugu and Gu Hanamo also stepped forward, as the seated officers also stood up. Gu Huaijiang gently laughed. Isn't that why I called all of you over? We, father and sons, will be going to war. Of course, it's not just for you guys. It's also for Yan Jing, for Huayin, for all of the military family's younger generation to never be troubled by war again. Chapter 265 Lu Yinyin, Part 1. The sunlight at dawn was dim, as a few groups departed from the Gu family's army's main camp. Gu Huaijiang stood in place and watched Gu Jiugu and Gu Hanamo depart. Gu Shubai stood to the side while feeling puzzled. Father, why did you not let son go? In this war, Western Kuan was opening up multiple fronts. He sent Gu Jiugu and Gu Hanamo out with the older generals to the border cities to fight together. He only kept Gu Shubai behind. He was the young general of the Gu family's army. He was the one who should have been the top candidate to be sent out. After a long time, Gu Huaijiang retracted his gaze. My judgment is that Zhu Guan is where Western Kuan's main army will attack. That's why I have kept you here. Gu Huaijiang's judgment on the battlefield had practically never been wrong before. Gu Shubai did not understand his judgment but subconsciously decided to believe it. So that's the case. That's also good. Second brother and third brother have just been conferred their titles as generals and are lacking in experience. Having them gain experience on the smaller battlefields is better than having them go directly to the main battlefield. Gu Huaijiang looked at him with a smile. Father knew. How could my sons possibly fall out and become enemies while contending for the same love? As long as things between you and Jiugu are fine, everything is good. This was the first time that he had ever brought this up in front of Gu Shubai. Gu Shubai had always believed that he was not worried about it, but it turned out that he was indeed worried about it. It was just that he never said it. Back when father engaged Yufu to me, why did you not consider second brother's feelings, not even saying anything to him? What? All of you like Yufu. Does father need to say something to all of you one by one? Gu Huaijiang was in a good mood and rolled his eyes at him. Don't think that father engaged Yufu to you because I favor you. Father wasn't paying attention to you guys. Father was paying attention to whom Yufu liked. If she liked Jiugu, father would have engaged her to him. Gu Shubai let out a sigh of relief. A father who did not know how to take care of a daughter was able to judge whom this daughter liked. Was it luck or was it ability? Regardless, it was fortunate that his judgment was correct. Let's go. While the sun has yet to rise, follow father up Zhu Mountain. Zhu Guan had mountains to its two sides. The one with the sheerest peak was known as Zhu Mountain because of how it rose straight into the clouds like bamboo. Those who have never been to the border might think that Zhu Mountain was covered in bamboo, but that was not the case. The mountain was heavily forested and had all sorts of tall trees that could conceal the sky. Father, there won't be a path to follow if we go any further. Father and son only had a small group of escorting soldiers with them. Halfway up the mountain, the sun began to rise beautifully. They had no time to appreciate the beauty. Looking up, they found themselves at a mountain face, and it suddenly felt as though they had come up against an impossible task. Gu Huaijiang wiped the sweat from his brow. We will continue until we reach the peak. Just behind Zhu Mountain is Western Kuan's territory. I'm bringing you to take a look at their camp. The final stretch up to the top of the mountain saw them climb up using rattan that hung down from the top of the sheer face. Be careful and conceal yourself. Zhu Mountain is a clear marker on the border of the two countries. Right now, it could be said that we're in Eastern Ling's borders, and it could also be said that we're in Western Kuan's border. Everyone lay down on the peak and looked over to the other side of Zhu Mountain, instantly becoming enlightened. There was an endless stretch of black tents, stern and solemn. The character Lu could be seen on Western Kuan's army banners. Gu Huaijiang said, Western Kuan's head general, Lu Kuang, is said to lead a force of 500,000 troops. That is a force that could destroy all countries. Based on the tents, can you tell if that number is true or false? In Western Kuan, women were able to participate in warfare like men. However, there were not many who were able to fight on the same level as the men. Lu Yinyin could be considered outstanding. Therefore, Gu Shubai was able to clearly remember this name. Over a decade ago, Lu Yinyin was the most promising female general of Western Kuan, and she was tasked by Emperor Kuan to lead the army in an attack on Eastern Ling, and it was during the battle at Zhuguan that she was captured alive by Gu Huaijiang. To have their general captured alive was a great humiliation for Western Kuan, especially since this general was also female. At that time, Western Kuan offered to exchange 500 captured Eastern Ling soldiers for Lu Yinyin, and Gu Huaijiang had accepted, but Lu Yinyin, having been captured, felt humiliated. While the guards were not paying attention, she committed suicide by poison. At that time, Lu Kuang was the deputy general, and he executed the 500 captives in a fit of rage. Gu Huaijiang pointed to the other side, just outside of Zhu Guan's gates. It was there. I watched on, as 500 soldiers were decapitated, blood flowing like a river. It was only now that Gu Shubai understood why Zhu Guan would be the main battlefield. Chapter 266 Siege of 1,000 Snakes, Part 2, Head General, Young General, the sun has already come up. It would be bad if we were discovered by Western Kuan soldiers. Let's quickly descend the mountain. They had already seen what needed to be seen and recorded what needed to be recorded. They turned around and started descending the mountain when they suddenly heard a rustling sound come from the forest. Who is it? The rustling sound did not stop. On the contrary, it seemed to get even closer, as the sounds came from every direction. They seemed to have fallen into an encirclement. Gu Shubai said, "It doesn't seem to be humans. It seems to be some sort of animal." Animal? What sort of animal would move through the forest and work together like this? Hearing the sound get closer and closer, these animals were clearly rushing toward them. Behind them was a cliff face that provided no protection, while in front of them, there was a forest full of creatures blocking their path. There was no way to flee. Everyone tacitly pulled out their swords, blocking Gu Huaijiang and Gu Shubai behind them. Head General, Young General, if it's something that we can't defeat, you two climb down the cliff first. These soldiers did not fear death. Even if they were covered in goosebumps, there was not the slightest hesitation when they moved to defend their general. Even if some sort of spirit, tiger, or bear came out, they would use their flesh and blood to fight and create an opening for their head general. Gu Huaijiang said in a low voice, "Don't panic and look closer." His voice was like a calming pill, as the soldiers' hands no longer trembled. They watched closely for any movements in the forest. Whoosh dash, a horrific breathing sound filled the air, and a sharp-eyed guard immediately pointed to the right. "It's a snake. A venomous snake." It was not just one. There were 7 or 8 venomous snakes. They had black bodies with gold ring patterns on them. With their tongues out, they advanced. "They're over there too." Another guard pointed to the left, as venomous snakes advanced toward them. This sight was truly horrifying. They had killed countless enemies on the battlefield, and they never feared their enemies' swords. However, they have never experienced such a terrifying scene. Hundreds upon thousands of venomous snakes rushed toward them as if being controlled by someone. With a swing of the sword, a guard cut off the head of a snake. The decapitated snake's eyes shone with enmity, as the head suddenly flew toward the soldier that had cut its head off. The soldier did not expect that a decapitated snake would still be able to move and was not able to react in time. Just as his leg was about to be bitten, a sword cut the head in two. This time, the snake's head fell completely still. The snake's blood dripped from the tip of Gu Shubai's sword. When cutting a snake, make sure to cut it 7 inches down, or it won't die immediately. On the contrary, it will seek revenge. While he spoke, another 2 venomous snakes approached. This time, the soldiers were prepared, cleanly cutting through the snake's weak point. Gu Huaijiang said, "Retreat to the edge of the cliff." The closer they were to the edge of the cliff, the narrower it became, allowing for their smaller numbers to shine. As the group retreated, the snakes surged forward. While Gu Shubai killed the snakes, he said, "These snakes are definitely being driven to do this by something. It could be that Western Kuan's people knew that we would come here to scout and deliberately set this up." Ah! One of the soldiers was bitten on the leg, and the snakes in the back rushed forward but were cut in 2 by Gu Shubai. "Back up!" The soldier who had been bitten immediately dove to the back, and Gu Shubai took his place, continuing to kill snakes. The hundreds upon thousands of snakes continued to charge forward like an endless river. Gu Huaijiang was relatively safe in the back. Lowering his head to take a look, black blood was seeping out of the soldier's leg, and his lips were already purple. "Hold on." He tore his sleeve and wrapped it tight around the wound to try and stop the poison from spreading. "Father, take care of this." He handed the one with the most fragrance to Gu Huaijiang, then gave the rest to the other soldiers. "Carry him. The camp has medicine to treat snake venom." He pointed at the soldier on the ground, then took the lead and headed toward the group of snakes. With the amount of fragrance reduced, the snakes might no longer be afraid. He had to perform an experiment. "Young general, you mustn't." The soldiers behind him wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. They could only watch Gu Shubai walk into the middle of the circle of snakes. Whoosh! As he moved, the group of snakes seemed to hesitate, staying unmoved near his feet. Suddenly, they moved as if to attack. Everyone was on edge, while Gu Shubai remained in place, his body completely stiff. After a long moment, the group of snakes complacently retreated until they completely disappeared from view. Chapter 267 Multicolored Gem of Triumph, Part 3, Young Miss, Lord Marquis has sent a letter back. Qian was old, but he still happily ran over to the western wing with the letter in hand. He was laughing like a little child. He had always been steady, and it was very rare to see him so lively. The maidservants in the western wing secretly laughed, as they never expected the old steward to be this sort of person. Hearing that a letter had been delivered, Yu Fu rejoiced. She quickly went outside to take a look and found the maidservant standing to the side and laughing at Qian, while he himself seemed to be clueless. In the past, Yu Fu had only seen him occasionally get lively in front of Gu Huaijiang, but he always remained calm in front of the younger generation. He was even stricter when dealing with the manor's servants. Who knew if he was happy due to receiving the letter, or if he was finally viewing Yu Fu as the master of the manor and was showing his respect. Yu Fu did not think about it too much, receiving the letter. "Steward, please be seated. Have some tea before we speak." Right, why was the letter not sent to fourth brother first? Qian was stunned. In recent days, he had grown accustomed to sending the manor's affairs to Yu Fu's side to be handled. Gu Wenqing was only responsible for receiving guests and matters outside the manor. All of the manor's internal matters were left to Yu Fu. Seeing Qian freeze, Yu Fu did not say anything else. "Drink some tea first. I'll take a look at what the letter says, then tell you about it." She read the letter very quickly. Quickly skimming through, she did not see any bad news. It was only then that she calmed down to carefully read through the letter. Qian saw her reaction to the letter and knew that Lord Marquis and the young sirs were safe. Only then did he pick up his cup. Head General wrote in the letter that the situation on the border is still under control and there is no danger for the time being. It's just that they climbed up Zhu Mountain a few days ago to do some scouting, and they were attacked by a swarm of venomous snakes. They believe it's one of Western Kuan's tactics, thus they wrote back to ask me what the cause could be. Ha! A swarm of venomous snakes. Qian suddenly recalled that time that Su Yunyan had been bitten by a venomous snake. Just one snake was enough to nearly claim Su Yunyan's life, so how could a swarm be anything good? He had a nervous look on his face, and Yu Fu gently said, "Don't worry. They're all fine." The period of time after the Dragon Boat Festival is when snakes and insects appear the most. I made preparations beforehand and gave eldest brother a fragrance to ward off snakes. The medicine that I had third brother bring along is able to ease heat fatigue and treat toxins. If they have been frequently consuming the medicines, even if they were bitten by a venomous snake, they would be able to hold on until they could be treated by a military doctor. Qian's expression relaxed. "That's good. That's good. It's fortunate that young Miss knows all of these methods for countering poisons, otherwise, wouldn't Lord Marquis and the young sirs have suffered greatly at the hands of Western Kuan?" He reflected on the time since Yu Fu arrived at Marquis Gu's manor. At the start, the title of Immortal Practitioner of Poison had caused him to worry, but he slowly discovered that rather than poisoning others, Yu Fu was one who treated poisons. Aside from when Qi Ting had rashly framed her, he had never seen her poison anyone in the manor. On the contrary, Gu Huaijiang, Gu Shubai, and Su Yunyan were all treated by Yu Fu when they were poisoned. This sort of immortal practitioner of poison, how was she any different from the deity of medicine, who could save people from death's doorstep? Yu Fu smiled and said, "All right, bring the letter to fourth brother and the others too." She handed the letter back inside the envelope and suddenly noticed something hard inside the envelope. Emptying it into her palm, she found that it was a gem roughly the size of a fingernail that shone brilliantly. What was amazing about it was that this gem was a different color depending on the angle. In just a few moments, Yu Fu saw 7 colors. Qian glanced at her palm and said in shock, "Ah, isn't this one of Western Kuan's multicolored gems?" Yu Fu had never heard of this multicolored gem and immediately handed it to Qian. "What's a multicolored gem?" Qian cheerfully said, "This is the rumored mystical gem. It's a gem that's found in the jade mines on the border between Western Kuan and Eastern Ling. There's no guarantee that one the size of a fingernail could be found in the entirety of the mine. Head General and the others must have found the multicolored gem on Zhu Mountain. They will definitely return from this war triumphant." Chapter 268 5 Phoenix Coronet, Part 4. With Princess Danyang's and Kun Yuyong's weddings gradually approaching, less and less focus was placed on the war at the border. Eastern Ling's court never focused too much on the situation at the border. After so many years, Gu Huaijiang had never lost before, so there was no need for them to worry. Rather than worry about the situation at the border, it would be better to think about how they should congratulate Gu Huaijiang when he returned. There were also some who were worried. Before their triumphant return, the Gu family already had 5 people with ranks and titles. If they returned victorious, would His Majesty not confer titles to the other 3 sons? Gu Huaijiang had a good life. He only took 1 wife, yet his 6 sons were all capable. Even the daughter that he had adopted was intelligent and observant. She also had the support of the deity of medicine. The life of this princess was sure to be better than the lives of the 2 princesses who were about to get married. In a small courtyard at the post house, the candles burned bright in the night in preparation for the grand wedding ceremony that was to take place after the sun rose. May your marriage last a lifetime. May your marriage be blessed with happiness and harmony. May you be blessed with many children and grandchildren. May you be blessed with a long life. The wedding nanny who had come from Western Kun brushed Kun Yuyong's hair. While brushing her hair, she recited these blessings. While doing this, she also helped her put on her jeweled earrings and a heavy red and gold phoenix coronet. Kun Yuyong lifted her face with her red lips and smiled. "Nanny, it's so heavy. Be a little gentler." A look of pity flashed through the eyes of the middle-aged palace servant who had been called Nanny. "My dear princess, what are you calling heavy? Did you know that the phoenix coronet worn by the princess born of the empress has a total of 8 phoenixes and weighs a total of 8 jin and 8 taels? Initially, your phoenix coronet also had 8 phoenixes, but it's fine, Nanny." Her coronet and cape were brought over from Western Kun. Normally speaking, it was common to give the princess who was coming over in a political marriage a bit more standing. In Western Kun, she was a princess born of a concubine, and the Board of Rights provided her with a phoenix coronet with 8 phoenixes, putting her on the same level as a princess born of the empress. At present, the coronet that the nanny placed on her head only had 5 phoenixes. It was put her below the status of even the princesses born of concubines, who would often have coronets with 7 phoenixes. Kun Yuyong smiled and said, "His Majesty of Eastern Ling is kind. He clearly knows that Western Kun is using me as a cover for their plans, yet he is still allowing me to marry young Sir Ning. Their treatment of me has not changed, so what is there for me to complain about?" Naturally, the nanny understood that Emperor Ning was kind. She too was grateful. His Majesty of Eastern Ling is kind and generous, and this servant naturally understands it. But that Princess Danyang is a little too domineering. Fearing that princess wearing the same number of phoenixes as her while sharing a wedding day, they actually had princess remove 3 phoenixes. By removing 1 phoenix, it would have been enough to show her status as princess born of Eastern Ling's empress, so why remove 3? If Kun Yuyong was told to remove 1 phoenix, that would be Princess Danyang improving her own status. But having her remove 3 phoenixes was clearly just an attempt to humiliate her. Western Kun's people were belligerent and placed great importance on face. To the nanny, this sort of humiliation was even more difficult to accept than death. "Nanny." Kun Yuyong straightened her coronet and coolly said, "We will be going into the palace shortly. Nanny must remember. Today is a day of celebration for me, and as someone who is coming to get married from Western Kun, nobody must show any unhappiness. Do you understand?" The nanny froze. She had thought that Kun Yuyong was a lively person who did not care much about how many phoenixes were on her coronet, but she seemed to be quite profound with what she said. "Princess," Diana brought out the phoenix coronet and checked how it would look on her head. "Princess needs to quickly get dressed and put on makeup. It's not for the sake of improving your husband's image but for princess' own image." This servant heard that the princess from Western Kuan got up before the sun came up to get her makeup done. Our princess is a natural beauty, but how could any good come from being pushed down by her beauty? These words immediately made Princess Danyang alert, as she glared at Diener. Nonsense. Even if this princess wore my usual formal clothes, they would be better than what that lowly Kuan Yuyang could wear. She is just a sacrifice sent by an enemy country to serve as a distraction. Loved by neither her father nor her mother, will she not also need to pay her respects to this princess? Palace maid and wedding nanny stood to the side, respectfully holding up a horn comb. Princess, please come and get your makeup done. May your marriage last a lifetime. May your marriage be blessed. All right, there's no need to recite such meaningless stuff. This one does not want to grow old together with Yin Shuo. You just need to concern yourself with making me look beautiful. Don't let that seductress from Western Kuan steal my glory. The wedding nanny hesitantly said, but princess, this must be recited whenever a girl gets married for the husband and wife to have a harmonious. Diener gave the wedding nanny a look and received the horn comb, cutting her off, and the wedding nanny quickly retreated. While brushing Princess Danyang's hair, she coaxed her into a good mood. Our princess is noble beyond compare. Even if those words are not recited, would her husband dare to bully the princess? Princess, don't worry. By having that princess from Western Kuan only wear 5 phoenixes on her coronet, she will suffer a great humiliation. How could she possibly steal your glory? Princess Danyang joyously looked into the mirror. You really know how to make me happy. Chapter 269. No longer a citizen of Western Kuan, Part 5. Early in the morning, Yin Shuo was wearing his red wedding clothes, and he had been standing in the ancestral hall for quite some time. On the day of the wedding, he needed to kowtow to his parents, but Yin Yen was far away and could not come back. Thus he had no choice but to perform this rite in the ancestral hall. It was also better that he could not come back. In his mind, he did not truly think of today as his grand wedding day. Every word that Princess Danyang said to humiliate him at Chunhee Garden echoed in his mind. Thinking of that plump and arrogant woman dressed in decadent clothes, adorned with pearls looking down at him with disdain caused his gaze to turn cold. She dared to humiliate him, and he would eventually return the favor. After standing for a long time until his legs started to feel numb, he turned to the side. Where's the young miss? After I go into the palace, she will be the only master in the manor. Welcoming the princess into the manor will rely on her thoroughness. The servant behind him bowed, replying to eldest young sir, the wound on the young miss' forehead still hasn't healed. She said that it's inconvenient to go out and receive guests and cannot go outside today. It still hasn't healed after such a long time. Yin Shuo turned to look at him with a piercing gaze. What are you all doing? Could it be that you haven't been bringing a doctor in every day to change her dressing? Nothing must happen to Yin Jiao's face. He still needed to rely on Yin Jiao to gain more information on the cabinet. The servant panicked. We have. Of course, we servants have. Last time, the doctor said that the wound has already formed a scab, but for some reason, when the scab was removed, it started bleeding again. The doctor initially said that it wouldn't leave a scar, but now, the eldest young miss of a venerated family did not need to work. She did not even need to go out. How could her scab have been removed? There was only one possibility. Yin Jiao herself did not want the wound to heal and was deliberately removing the scab. Very well, everyone seems to be going against me. Good, very good. He repeated himself numerous times to the point that the servants thought that he was mad at him. Frightened, he dropped to his knees to beg for forgiveness. Yin Shuo sneered, today is the day of my wedding. I don't want to argue with her. Go and tell the young miss that if her wound still has not healed by the next time that the doctor visits, there's no need for it to ever heal. After saying this, he strode out of the hall. After waiting for him to get further away, the servant trepidatiously raised his head. Turning his head, he saw the figure in red gradually move further and further away until he disappeared from view outside the ancestral hall's courtyard. For some reason, he felt that the red clothes that Inshoa wore did not have the slightest celebratory atmosphere. "Princess, it's almost time. When should we set out?" In the post house, all of the people who had come from Western Kuan were waiting for Kuan Yuyong's order. She would be the one to decide when they set out. Whether they set out earlier or later, there were many rules to such a thing. It was no good if they went too early, as it would show that she was too lacking in restraint. After Western Kuan mobilized its army, there were quite a few in Eastern Ling's court who criticized her background, so if she went too early, she would just be mocked. It was even worse if she went too late. For Emperor Ning to allow her to get married as a princess meant to improve relations between two countries was already very generous. If she showed the slightest bit of negligence, it was possible that it would become a topic of discussion for others. When it came to her life, Kuan Yuyong needed to make the most appropriate decision. After taking a deep breath, she smiled at everyone with a radiant look. "There's no need to wait. We will set out now." When it came to survival, face was not too important. This was something that she had learned from her many years of living in Western Kuan's imperial palace. Apologies, she is now a wife to Eastern Ling's imperial family. She is no longer a citizen of Western Kuan. Outside the small courtyard, a man in red clothes walked in with a smile. His demeanor was quite casual. Kuan Yuyong looked at him in disbelief. Was this not her future husband? "What, do I look too handsome today that my dear wife has become dazed?" Uncle Ning walked over to Kuan Yuyong's side and unreservedly placed an arm around her waist. The nanny's heart tightened upon seeing this, never expecting Eastern Ling's people to also be so unreserved. Even in Western Kuan, where the people were more open, an unmarried couple would not be so intimate. Kuan Yuyong blushed. It was not just a result of being held at the waist, but it was also that he had personally come to receive her, relieving her of the awkwardness of entering the palace on her own. He had also spoken up for her, leaving the official unable to say anything against her. Behind Uncle Ning was a group of relatives from the imperial family that looked at Kuan Yuyong with approval. "This brat is treating the princess like a real treasure, insisting on personally coming to fetch you. We were teasing him for wanting to be a husband to Western Kuan's imperial family, but hearing what Princess had to say, it's clear to see that Princess is an insightful person unlike the average person from Western Kuan." When that person mentioned the average person from Western Kuan, he glanced at the official from Western Kuan before looking away with disdain. He then cupped his hands toward Kuan Yuyong. "In the past, we misjudged Princess. Princess, please do not blame us. Today, we will personally welcome Princess into the palace as an apology." Chapter 270 Another Phoenix Hairpin, Part 1. After this commotion, Kuan Yuyong arrived even later than Princess Danyang. The two weddings took place at the same time in Darui Palace, with Emperor Ning personally sanctioning the weddings. Civil and military officials, along with members of the imperial family, were all present. This was an exceptionally grand scene. Princess Danyang arrived with assistance from the palace servants of the Western Palace, while Inshoa arrived alone from outside the palace. The newlywed couple walked in on their own, with neither saying a word to the other. Who knew if it was because they thought they were not a couple or if they still waiting for their new partners. The officials who had arrived early quietly discussed this. "I initially thought that after Prime Minister Yin had suffered that humiliation at the hands of Princess Danyang, he would definitely bring up cancelling the engagement. Who knew that he would not react and that His Majesty would not react, and the wedding ended up happening. But that does explain why the princess doesn't look happy, and Prime Minister Yin also looks unhappy. This marriage is quite awkward." The newlyweds were awkward, and the ones who had come to the banquet felt even more awkward. They had prepared a whole host of compliments, yet the newlywed couple was completely indifferent, thus the compliments that they had prepared could not be said. It was best to not say them. Saying them would not make them happy, it was possible that it would make them annoyed. It was only after Uncle Ning arrived with his imperial relatives to receive Kun Yuyang into the palace that everyone felt that there was a celebratory atmosphere, as everyone went over to congratulate them. Congratulations, congratulations. May the two of you enjoy a lifetime of harmony. You two really are a match made by the heavens despite coming from opposing families. Congratulations. May the two of you have a beautiful child soon. Everyone offered their congratulations, and not a single one was a repeat of what someone else had said. Kun Yuyang was stunned by the overwhelming favor. She initially thought that she would be shown contempt because of Western Kun's actions at the border, but who knew that everyone would be so kind and welcoming toward her? How could she know that this group of people had come over after dealing with the oppressive atmosphere around Princess Danyang and Yin Shuo? They were all too eager to find someone to congratulate. Many thanks to everyone for the kind words. Uncle Ning cheerfully cupped his hands and returned the kindness. Kun Yuyang's clothes made movement inconvenient and did not know if she should return the gesture. She could only watch on from the side in a daze. After a brief moment, tears started to well up in her eyes and nearly overflowed onto her face. Seeing that she arrived late but still received everyone's congratulations and well wishes, Princess Danyang's red wedding handkerchief had become an unseemly mess from being wrung so hard. Now that she saw tears well up in her eyes, she had finally found something to hold on to, Father Emperor. Looking at the tears in the eyes of that princess from Western Kun. It's clear that she doesn't want to marry Uncle. She is resentful of Father Emperor's kindness and clearly looks down on Father Emperor. Her shrill screams attracted the attention of everyone present. Kun Yuyang was so overwhelmed by her emotions that she was almost unable to react to what had just been said. By the time that she reacted, everyone was looking at the tears in her eyes before quickly averting their gazes. The tears in her eyes were clearly from joy. How could she possibly hold any resentment? Princess Danyang was truly trying to make trouble out of nothing. What nonsense are you spouting? After receiving information on the wedding date, Western Kun's princess specifically came to the palace to give her thanks. How could she feel resentment? Emperor Ning sat at the head spot and quietly scolded Princess Danyang. Because there were two newlywed couples today, aside from Emperor Ning, his imperial uncle and aunt sat just a bit lower. They were Emperor Ning's uncle and aunt, and they were Uncle Ning's parents. The imperial uncle leaned close to Emperor Ning and whispered something to him, causing Emperor Ning to look over at Kun Yuyang. The newlywed husband in red was whispering something into her ear, and Kun Yuyang's face instantly turned red. I am emotional from everyone's kindness. It's not because you personally came to receive me. She actually gave Kun Yuyang a phoenix hairpin. Kun Yuyang was originally wearing a 5 phoenix coronet, but after the phoenix hairpin was added, it immediately resembled a 6 phoenix coronet. Diener hastily stopped her. Princess, keep your voice down. That is His Majesty's imperial aunt, your grand-aunt. As a member of the imperial family, it's natural that she would have a phoenix hairpin. Keep your voice down and don't let His Majesty hear you. Princess Danyang was dizzy with anger. There are so many members in the imperial family that they can't be counted. Based on what you said, this one will need to refer to Kun Yuyang as imperial aunt in the future. She should dream on. Earlier, His Majesty was told something by his imperial uncle. He must have said that Western Kun's princess doesn't look good wearing a 5 phoenix coronet. His Majesty must have only allowed his imperial aunt to give her the phoenix hairpin after that. You absolutely must not shout about it, or it will be opposing His Majesty's intentions. Naturally, Princess Danyang understood this. Without Emperor Ning's permission, they would not dare to do something like giving away a phoenix hairpin. But she still felt displeased. She was unhappy with Kun Yuyang having the slightest bit of glory. Sister Danyang, don't worry. I also wore a phoenix hairpin into the palace. If I give it to you, wouldn't it also have the effect of suppressing Western Kun's princess? A voice suddenly came from behind Princess Danyang, and she immediately turned around. It was actually Yu Fu standing there with a smile. In her hand was a phoenix hairpin that completely resembled the one that the two brides were wearing. Chapter 271 Talk to the Side, Part 2. Having been conferred the title of princess, it was natural that Yu Fu would have a phoenix hairpin, like other females of the imperial family. Princess Danyang was elated at first. Like this, she would still be able to completely suppress Kun Yuyang, but she quickly calmed back down. Something was wrong. How could Yu Fu be so generous and give her her own phoenix hairpin? She racked her brains and quickly furrowed her brow. Are you trying to kill me? I'm currently wearing a coronet with 8 phoenixes, the style meant for the princess born of the empress. If another phoenix is added, it would be the style of the empress. Are you not wholeheartedly trying to get me killed? No matter how noble a princess born of the empress was, she could not compare with the empress. Wearing a coronet with 9 phoenixes was a capital crime. Yu Fu smiled innocently. Does Sister Danyang not want it? Then I'll take it and leave. If you don't want it, just don't take it. Why are you so angry? Emperor Ning turned and saw Yu Fu, happily waving to her. Yu Fu, come here and let us see you. We haven't seen you in a long time. Ever since Emperor Ning had been cured by Sun Qi, he liked Yu Fu even more, treating her more and more like a princess born of the empress. Yu Fu put on a bitter expression and slowly walked over. Surprised, Emperor Ning said, "What's wrong? Who bullied you? We are also your father Emperor. Tell us, and we will punish them for you." That's not it. Yu Fu said that there was nothing, but she turned to glance at Princess Danyang. I wanted to give this phoenix hairpin to Sister Danyang, but Sister Danyang did not want it. Princess Danyang's heart tightened for fear of Yu Fu saying something bad about her. Sure enough, Emperor Ning looked at her unhappily. What was wrong with her today? Causing trouble again and again on her wedding day, did she want to have the imperial family's image completely ruined along with her? When he looked back at Yu Fu, his expression slowly returned to normal. Since your sister Danyang doesn't want it, you can keep it for yourself. When you get married, you can also wear it. Yu Fu deliberately pretended to be naughty, but I worked so hard to bring it into the palace. I don't want to bring it back with me. Ah. I know. I can give it to Yuyang. What does your majesty think? Yuyang. Emperor Ning thought for a bit before realizing that this was the name of the princess from Western Kun. Are you and the princess from Western Kun very close? Yu Fu fell silent for a moment. I hated her quite a bit at first. If not for Western Kun's people, head general, eldest brother, and the others wouldn't need to leave the capital, but she is a pretty good person. She's different from the other people from Western Kun. I want to be friends with her. Emperor Ning became spirited, and his imperial uncle also moved a little closer to listen. How is she different? Has your majesty not heard? When Uncle Ning led a group to the post house to pick up his bride, the envoy from Western Kun didn't want Yuyang to leave early, saying that she was trampling on Western Kun's image. Yuyang said that one can only be humiliated after doing something shameful. It was Western Kun's actions that trampled on Western Kun's image, not Eastern Ling. Emperor Ning slapped his thigh. Good. Well said. Imperial uncle, you really are fortunate, getting such a great daughter-in-law. Initially, the imperial uncle was unhappy with the idea of his son taking a princess from Western Kun as a wife, as it was inevitable that he would be mocked as being the husband of Western Kuen's imperial family. But ever since his son met Western Kuen's princess at Chunhee Garden, it was as though he had become possessed, insisting on marrying her. He even said that as long as he married Western Kuen's princess, he would no longer gamble, and he would get a proper job in court. It was only then that the imperial uncle and imperial aunt accepted the princess from Western Kuen. Hearing what Yu Fu said, the imperial uncle felt completely at ease. "It's your majesty who is fortunate. It's fortunate that Western Kuen sent a princess with keen insight. In the future, she will settle down and become a wife to my Eastern Ling's imperial family. This will also reduce your majesty's worries." Emperor Ning smiled brightly and waved to Yu Fu. "Since that's the case, go ahead." Yu Fu spoke casually and placed Kuen Yuyang's hands in Uncle Ning's hands. "Uncle, I will leave Yuyang to you." Based on the difference in generations, Yu Fu should indeed call him uncle. Uncle Ning did not put on any airs. Instead, he respectfully bowed toward her. "Niece, I can't thank you enough for what you have done. If there's anything that uncle can do for you, just ask." His posture was very respectful, but his tone was very carefree. He truly sounded like a wanton son of a noble family. Yu Fu could not stop herself from rolling her eyes. He was only in his early 20s, yet he actually used the difference in generations to call her niece. She turned to leave and suddenly saw another figure dressed in red standing all alone. It was In Shuo. If not for his red clothes standing out, Yu Fu really would not have been able to tell that he was a groom. Compared to him, Uncle Ning's carefree and wanton attitude was far more pleasant. With a faint smile on his face, he walked over from quite far away. "It still hasn't reached the auspicious hour, and the ceremony won't be taking place for some time. May this lowly official invite Princess Zhenjiang to the side for a chat." You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.